sometimes I wonder if we should like practice with cold openings rather than rehearsed scripted openings. Adam, what do you want to talk about today?
Oh, is this our opening? Okay.
I don't know. Is it?
I think
Yeah,
we should have a very awkward opening.
I think that's where we're on the path.
I think we should definitely publish this part and make it as awkward
yeah,
as possible.
for sure. We should let's talk shit about something during
All
it.
right.
FuRyu is making a new game.
Oh, well, I
Yep, we're
can't
gonna
talk
talk
shit
about
about them. I'm excited about that.
You've heard most of the voices that are on the podcast today. I'm Brian. Joining me, we've got Adam. You've heard his voice. You heard Cullen Black. Welcome back to the podcast. We have Josh Torres, and he didn't speak up yet, but
Yeah.
we also have James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Nice cold open experiment.
I like this experiment. Let's do it next week.
We're gonna roll with it. We'll see what the people want, and then
what's the name of this podcast, and what's your name?
Were you?
Who?
I said who it was.
Did you? I don't remember.
Brian is my name. This is
Okay.
the Tetracast. Nothing happened this week.
Okay.
Nothing at all.
Nope.
That's good. So there's the end of the
All right,
podcast, right?
Yep. No games to talk about.
That's it.
Games are canceled.
So, we are recording this on Saturday, February 24th. Obviously, the big two things of this week are the review embargo for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We published that review up on our website 2 days ago. I mean, it's if you're anywhere online in a gaming sphere, you'll probably be seeing that everywhere by the time you're listening to this podcast. Of course, the demo is out and expanded. So if you're listening to this podcast before the release date on February 29th and you're interested in the game, the demo is out and available. Otherwise, the game will release on Thursday. And then, of course, we had the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase just a few days ago at the time of recording that had a lot of RPG-related topics that we're going to talk about. So those are kind of the seemingly big topics today. However, we were discussing before going on to the recording today about pushing the main discussion of Rebirth to next week because it'll be out and available. We can have not everyone that had early access be able to have some chance with the demo and with the full game. And then we might even get our reviewer for the game, Josh Tolentino. We might be able to get him on to talk about it as well. So this week, we had a few other games that have released in the last 7 days that we're going to be starting with instead. The first of which is a game that we kind of talked about on, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago as potentially a sleeper hit for the space, and that is Last Epoch. So this is a game that was in early access and then just released in the last week, and has seemingly done pretty well, at least on the Steam space. And Josh has put some time into it. That is Josh Torres, the one that is present right now. So we went ahead and kind of earmarked that to go first. So we can hand it off over to Josh to talk about your time so far with Last Epoch.
Yeah, so this is a game that Leah said came out in early access. I want to say at least 5 years ago. It's been in early access for quite some time, and it's definitely this 11th Hour Games who both developed and published it. You can definitely tell it's like an action RPG that was made by action RPG fans. Throughout that whole early access process, this feels like a pretty solid offering that's only like $35. And that's not on a discount, that's just full price for it. And it feels very, very robust and pretty satisfying for if you're looking for something that's more complex than Diablo, but not as complex as Path of Exile. There's like a good middle ground of having a wealth of complex systems without going overboard because Path of Exile has earned that reputation. And also it's warranted if you start researching how what works in Path of Exile. So there's a good middle ground between for that. So this game is to talk about the structure of it first. One of the most important things in an action RPG is what are the class selections? What are the things how can you build a character? There's 5 base classes. There's the Sentinel, Acolyte, Primalist, Rogue, and Mage. And then picking one of these base classes will eventually let you spec into one of 3 masteries for them, and there's a pretty permanent decision. Once you commit to a mastery, you can't take that back. So that's kind of one of the permanent things in the game where you can't respec or you'd have to reroll into a new character. Basically, so for example, right now I'm a warlock, and that's one of the 3 mastery classes for Acolyte. And these are all pretty robust, different masteries. Like Lich, um, uh, has its own like gimmick. Necromancer, I assume, has its gimmick like minions and raising the dead and all that stuff. While Warlocks are very dot oriented, placing curses, and so on. And then all the other base classes have their own thing going on. Like Sentinel could be like a Forge Guard, Void Knight, and Paladin. And Mage can go like Rune Master, Spellblade, and Sorcerer. They all do very
And
different shit.
do you make that decision very early on, or is that like a specialization you tap into once you progress through the game?
You progress through. You earn it like about I want to say maybe 3 to 4 hours into a playthrough. So you make that decision like somewhat early on in your game. Not like right at the beginning. You do have to put some hours, but you'll get there, and then you're basically put the decision, and then tells you right away, hey, you can't take this back. Make sure this is the one that you want. Essentially.
Okay.
And then I guess to address, the state that this game has launched in, like a lot of obviously it's a pretty rough launch. It's sort of like suffering from success, sort of like Helldivers did, where it's a pretty small studio, relatively small studio. It's not as big as Blizzard. I don't know if it's as big as Grinding Gear Games with Path of Exile. I don't think it is, but a lot of people logged on and have been trying to play it online and can't connect because server issues. There's a lot of they probably weren't expecting this much people to play at 1.0 release. But the nice thing about this is if you're like obviously if you wanted to play with friends or you wanted to trade with others, you had to play online, and that sucks. The server issues. Hopefully they'll get ironed out like Helldivers and so forth. But if you
And
wanted to
as
just
we're
play,
recording right now, it's
Mhm.
basically at its peak. Like I'm looking at the Steam charts thing, and it's basically it's not quite at its all-time peak, but it's hovering right there, literally as we record right now. So and
What's the
it's at
number right now?
230,000.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
230,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good amount. And so, but the nice thing is, like, if you just want to play and you're okay with playing alone, like I'm fine with playing action RPGs like this, like Diablo alone. It's no big deal. So there's a play offline option, and that works totally fine. The main thing is like you cannot import an offline character into an online character. You have to commit. So those are separate. Um, Another nice thing about this game is that this $35 price is pretty set. Is there's not like there's microtransactions for cosmetics, but they're only cosmetics. Like even stuff like stash tabs, which is something you pay for additionally in Path of Exile, which is fair. That's their monetization scheme along with cosmetics, and people praise like the monetization practices of Path of Exile throughout the years. But in this game, like I think it's pretty interesting that if you want to get more stash tabs for your inventory because you could be, storing a lot of shit for systems I'll detail in a bit. You just pay like in-game gold that you earned for new stash tabs. And Diablo 4, we won't really talk about its stash tab situation because that game does a lot of bad decisions for action RPGs. So that's a really neat thing about it. Another neat thing about this game is as you're leveling your character, you're getting not just base character levels, but also like skill levels for your skills. So for instance, every time you level up and some side quests, you earn passive points. And as you earn passive points, it's hard to describe this in text alone. If you like have like a visual aid of like what the passive tree looks like, you're basically progressing along a bar, and each bar has like a vertical column of like different passives that you could spec that passive point into. So it could be like the passive could be like points into a certain stat that you're specializing in. It could be like an if then thing, like now like if you have a certain like amount of stats into something that will be used as a scale off of like warding, for example, which is like kind of like your shield that protects your HP that can regenerate. That's just a very very basic example. It's a very complex like game of like how you can manipulate what scales off of what. And the nice thing about it is like the in-game tooltips do a pretty decent job explaining it, and there's like more, and then you can like hold the button to get like a more thorough explanation. And another cool thing is like this game has like an in-game guide that like you basically just like you press escape and then click game guide, and then there'll be a game guide at the corner. It's like kind of like your encyclopedia that has its own search bar. So like if if you see like a term that you don't know, you just bring up that game guide in game, and then you type it in the search box, and then you'll get all relevant entries of like what has that term in there. So you can just use in-game resources to teach yourself instead of going to like a third-party site. Um, for clarification, like I think that's definitely one of the strengths of its early access period. It's like um, it gave them time to really flesh out. Okay, what's info that like we can provide to the player in a concise manner, which is nice. And another really cool thing about this game is it has like an in-game loot filter. So for people who don't know what a loot filter is, it's basically self-explanatory. Where every time you kill something and it drops something, not all loot is always going to be available. Like not available, but relatable to your build. So like say I'm an acolyte and something drops and it's like for a sentinel or a mage, I can't use that shit. I don't care about it. So a very basic loot filter that you can establish early on is you set a rule that says, hey, hide all items that drop that are not for my class. Hide all items that are sentinel, mage, rogue. I don't care. I'm an acolyte. I don't need to see that shit. If I can't use it, but there's no point. There could be things like you can recolor like the loot text. So like say, hey, if a piece of loot that drops that has something like a percent chance to bleed something, I want you to color that piece of loot red. So you can set that as a rule. It says, hey, recolor all items that have at least one affix or mod that says percent chance on bleed. So I know right away in the middle of combat, I should go pick up that piece of loot because it has a percent chance to bleed. I can just like check later if I could use that or not, but not right there on the fly. So when things are getting chaotic on the screen, you just know which pieces of loot to pick up because you already set a rule in that loot filter from the get-go, which is really, really handy and really nice. I wish this was like a standard for like all action RPG games
Now,
that were
so
like
if you
very loot
set
heavy.
something to hide, like if you set something to hide that's not a class you want, does it just not drop at all, or does it just drop it? It doesn't like give it a tooltip, or does it
I
automatically
think
convert it to like the vendor price, or what does it do?
I believe it just it'll if it were to drop it, it just hides it from you, so you don't see it on your interface. So I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
if you disabled it right there, then like there was something for it there, it'll just show it to you. Because the thing about this game is that you don't want it's not the type of game where like you want to pick up as much loot as possible to sell it to a vendor because the sell prices to a vendor is pretty low. So you're better off saving your time and energy, just not bothering to pick up that loot. It's that type of game. Like their main
Your
money
space in
sources.
your inventory is more
Yeah,
valuable than the item itself.
exactly. Because one of the things that how itemization is done in this game is like you're really when you think about how what kind of loot you want in this game, it's not necessarily higher level means better loot. There's a game that's more focused on like there's two aspects to like in any action RPG of this kind. When a piece of loot drops, let's say gloves drop, there's gonna be like its base stats where like it'll be like, hey, this has this armor value. It might have like another base stat of like this has you know this much intelligence on it and so forth. And then there'll be secondary mods on it. It'll be like this does like plus 30% fire resistance, plus 15% lightning damage, and then it might have like an additional stat of like plus 9 strength, etc. So the thing about this game that you're really focusing on early on when during the leveling process, like, I'm not at endgame yet, so I can't really say like how endgame goes. But I've seen some videos of like kind of the general gist of endgame. But when you're this correlates to the crafting system about these mods because when you instead of vendoring um, items for like a minuscule amount of gold, you want to probably shatter them instead. In terms of like like these gloves, for example, I don't exactly like. It might be gloves that I don't need, but I do like that plus 30% fire resistance and plus 15% lightning damage. Those mods might be something I want because I can probably slot them into another piece of equipment through crafting later on. So what I'll do is I'll buy an item to shatter it, it'll give me shards of that fire resistance, of that lightning resistance. It'll give me shards of those, so I can use those shards to craft into another item to add those resistances on that item instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was actually gonna ask, like, is there any chance if you hide a weapon that you can't use that, like, I can't use that weapon, but it's got an affix or a mod that I can use, and if there was a system to transmute or
Hmm.
salvage or
Yeah, yeah,
shatter, like, 'cause, you
yeah.
see that in Souls likes and Diablo likes, and I was wondering if there was a system equivalent system at play here.
Yeah, so that's my understanding. That is how the shatter system works in that, where like the crafting is it's pretty like generous for you of like anything that like there's a lot of items, and there's a lot of items that like you could kind of tinker with to make them feed into like another item later on, because they're like you might have like a useful mod and you want that mod, so you get like a shard of that mod to slot into and further build up and craft like an item that you have for like long-term use. So let's say for example you get a legendary item and like um it has some a good amount of like mods on it, but like you kind of wish it was just a little bit better, so you can feed it like shards that you shattered from other equipment into that in that aspect. Of course, like this does go into like the gold economy as well. I'm sure later on you'll be drowning in gold, but like earlier on, if you're just a fresh new character in the leveling process, like the items to like shatter them are pretty costly. So that's why you store shit in your inventory a lot, because you'll be like, I'll shatter that later on. Once I get like a stable gold economy going for myself. So going back to like this passive thing, right? So as you're leveling up, you eventually get choices on like what passives you want. There's also another thing in the game where at certain level thresholds, you'll get skill slots, and you can basically each every single skill in the game is not as complex as Path of Exile in terms of like when people think of Path of Exile, they think of like that crazy node map on it that like kind of defines your character build, but like you kind of have to really know the ins and outs of it to kind of get the most out of it. But every single skill in the game has its own like skill tree, and it has like different branches, and it has like it's not as complex as Path of Exile, but it still has like a good amount of nodes, and they um vastly change the properties of that skill depending on, and it's up to you to decide like what you value the most, what kind of skill scaling, how you want to like basically transform that skill into like some sort of like build for yourself. So for example, I have this skill called fissure, and this fissure costs a good amount of MP, and it makes a crack into the ground, and like there's like spirits coming out of it, and it's sort of like a miniature turret, um effectively. uh and so I'm like, okay, this skill is good, it does a lot of damage, but it's not really scaling off of like my build of choice, and my build right now is a warlock. It uses a lot of a skill called chaos bolts, and these chaos bolts have been modified to do a lot of dots, and as they hit and kill enemies, they heal me, and there's a chance of like more chaos bolts spawning if they kill something, etc. So I'm primarily specializing into like a bleed chaos bolt build. So there's a lot of things that happen, like if then statements happening when I put dots and bleed on monsters. So the more bleed stacks I can get, the better for like my character power state and flow. So one of the skill tree options in this fissure is like those spirits now they can scale off of physical, and you can convert the damage type of these spirits into bleed, or they become bleed spirits. So like they it has like a different like appearance too as you spec into them. Instead of like a green aura, it's now like a red crack in the ground, and it's like the spirits are all like bloody red now, as they're flowing out. And now I have another source of bleed that feeds into my ecosystem of power. Of course, you could probably there's other options on how you want to. If you don't want it, if you're not doing bleed, instead you're doing like an ignite build, for example, because ignite and bleed have different properties and different roads of power. And so you could, if that was your build, you could instead go down that route of like, hey, I don't want this to, I want this to ignite instead of bleed, or ignite instead of its base properties. Um, so it's that kind of action RPG where it's like it's a lot, but it's way more um, flexible and interesting than like something like Diablo, where in Diablo, for example, it's a very linear tree, and like the skill tree has like it barely does anything that looks cool. Like for example, they had that linear tree, and like there'll be little pip nodes off of that branch out of like a thing, and then like it'll be one pip will be like more damage, and the other pip will be like more critical damage, and it's like okay, cool, I
Yeah, Diablo
guess.
4's tree has a high proportion of passives, which is kind of convenient from like an ease of use because it's like I don't have to think about it. I just click it and then it's active all the time. And I don't have to engage with it. I just select it and I'm stronger. But yeah, there is no visual indication. There's no flavor to it. I want to say Diablo 3 was a little better at that. It's been a while, but I remember Diablo 3 like you would pick a skill and you would augment that skill in one of two or three ways. And Diablo 4 is a little bit of it, but I feel like 3 was better. That
Yeah, I
changed how
think
the animation
so.
looked or how
Like
like
for
the
example, like
specific
the hydras
properties of the
for wizard
ability.
for sorceress, and like you could have venom hydras or lightning hydras in Diablo
Mhm.
3, and like you see the visual change in that.
And Diablo 4 had a tiny bit of that, but yeah, a lot of it is just like you do the same ability, but now it gives you barrier 2, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, and then this game also has like a pretty like forgiving respec system where like as you get farther along to like leveling like a skill, you'll get like additional bonuses. Like if you decide to respec later down the line, you'll like it'll have like a base minimum like level it'll go to instead of being respec all the way back to one. You have to build it up again. So it is like respecing still has a cost, but it's not grave. For example, it's not like you're regrinding um all the way back up again. So I'm still in the leveling process. It's fun. Like the story is kind of whatever. It's like you're a traveler and you're trying to repair history and save the last humans with Epoch and time traveling. Like the nice thing about like that, because it's a time travel story, you get a lot of like environmental variety and monster designs. So I was streaming it one night to Adam, and I just randomly walked in this portal and it transported me back to like minus negative 6,000 BC or whatever. And then Adam's like, wait a minute, there wasn't
Yeah, he's
like
fighting velociraptors or whatever. Like there are no dinosaurs in 6,000 BC. I think. I think you have to go a bit further back than that.
it's really funny because like I'm just fighting dinosaurs all of a sudden. We're going this um thing. But along the way, like I think one of the bummer things as you're during the early level process, like a lot of like the environments early on are like very dark and dank and not really you can barely see shit, which is like whatever. But then once you reach like chapter 5, you get to like a desert area, and so you get to see things a lot. You see like scorpions, all sorts of shit. But it is definitely a game that's like it is way more complex than Diablo. So it is definitely a game that like you have to sit down and sort of kind of think about what you want to do when you're going through menus of like, okay, what kind of build do I want to go for? Because like even during the leveling process, it's no pushover. Like the enemy density in this game is not as crazy as Path of Exile, but easily more than Diablo, and it doesn't pull its punches. Like enemies will horde you, they can gang up on you, and if you don't have like a decent idea of like of how your defenses are gonna go, you're gonna get ripped to shreds pretty fast. Like uh, a major thing in like Path of Exile, for example, is resistances. Like when you think about like typical traditional RPGs in the console space, or like in other like Diablo, for example, like you don't really think about resistances a lot. Like as you just said, your base defense is usually like high enough that it's forgiving, where like you can take hits and it won't be that big of a deal. Um, but like things like in Path of Exile, for example, if you're not paying attention to like elemental resistances, you're gonna get ripped to shreds pretty fast because one of the things in that game is that every point of resistance that you put into like one of those elements is a pretty big deal for your character in surviving. And that I wouldn't say Last Epoch isn't like as crazy as Path of Exile, but you can still feel the difference on like when if you're paying attention to your resistances. Like I have like I'm capped at like 75% physical resistance. I have like maybe like 30 to 35% in fire resistance, but like 0% in void resistance. And like when I went to a void zone and I got like hit by like a few void shots, my character got fucking shredded because I didn't have any resistances to void. So I had to think a little bit about like, okay, what can I equip? What can I like craft to like get better survivability? And like and the game will give you like tools like idols, for example, for that. Which is like the idol thing is really funny because these are items that you can slot into like this idle board in your character. And it's a little bit like Tetris, where you can't rotate these idols, but you have to think about like they consume like slots. It could be like a 2x2. It could be like three. It could consume three spaces vertically. It's basically like these little trinkets that have like their own mods on them, and like you can equip to them as many as you want. But the caveat is they all have to fit into your idle slot board. So as you're leveling and doing quests, you unlock more of these slots. But in the meantime, you have to kind of like almost puzzle your way into like equipping as many as you can that are like useful to you, and so forth. So that's kind of like my very very like early experience in Last Epoch. I have like maybe I don't know several hours into it. It's like I treat it as one of those games that's not like super high commitment. I just like if I just want to like kill shit fast at an action RPG, I just boot that up and play for like an hour or so, and then continue on with my day. It's just very rewarding in that aspect of being a pick up and play game, for me.
The only question I have is based on like the one of the things the one of the big things about Diablo 4 is that it had a pretty much open world at the start instead of having like each I guess it was in a lot of ways it was still similar to the other Diablo games where each area of the open world would correspond to an act kind of instead of it being just a separate map. Like
Mhm.
how does just like exploration progression work in Last Epoch? Is it like linear zones or wide linear or
So
open?
these are zones that like you kind of phase into a map into like the next map, but it's like if you see like the overworld map, there's actually like a lot of like branching zones. So like you can go like to like a totally optional area because you wanted to like you were interested to see what was there, or there was actually an interesting thing when I saw the overhead map where I could have there was like this unique like marker where there's like a boot with like a feather on it, and I think there's like one of the and it when it highlighted says there's an alternate leveling path. You can skip like a certain amount of areas, but you have to go beat this dungeon to proceed. And it's like I think it's for those players that don't want to go through the whole campaign again, so they can go toward that path and get a more faster mainstream line into the end game because they've already done maybe the campaign at a certain point in early access and they don't want to redo it again. But there's a lot of like zones in the game that you can just like see it overhead map. It's like, oh, I could go to this zone. I don't have to, but I want to see what's there, and you're free to go do so. It won't stop you from doing that. So there's a lot of exploration. It's not fully open world. It's all very zone based, but there's still a large amount of like places you can see and explore on your own. You get to flesh that out, and the fast travel system is pretty robust because like it's the same as like any action RPG. We have like these warp portals, where you can kind of if you found the warp portal into a zone, you can fast travel into that zone. There's also a town portal that you just like instantly summon for no cost. So if you need to go back to town real fast to go do some shit, to get to clear your inventory, you can that's just in and out, um, as well. But yeah, but I haven't reached the end game yet. I'm still in the leveling part of the game, and I'm looking forward to see like what the end game shapes up to be. Because here's the thing, like I don't fully hate Diablo 4. I generally enjoyed the leveling in that game, but the end game of Diablo 4 I just despise. I cannot, and it feels like it's gotten worse every time I check in on it. Um, so for me in this game, like the leveling process is like a little bit more enjoyable than I did in Diablo 4. But the thing that obviously will make or break this game for me is like what does the end game loop look like? What am I going for? What's like kind of what am I striving towards? once I beat this campaign. So
Do you know like how long the campaign's supposed to be?
I have no idea. I honestly don't know.
How long to beat? Last Epoch.
Yeah, because I know the 1.0 release thing, they added more story elements to it. So, or I don't know if that like if it's like they added more story to the end game or more story to the campaign, or I don't know. I haven't kept up with the early
Some people
access.
say like it's pretty varied, anywhere between 15 and 25
Okay, that
for
doesn't
main.
seem
For
too bad.
main, I don't know about exhaustive completionists. Probably way
Right.
higher.
Yeah.
So
So hopefully, they fix up the online issues. Obviously, and I think if you don't have to get it right away, but if you're ever in the mood for like a good Diablo clone and you don't want to invest a lot of your time to like learning something like Path of Exile, I think Last Epoch is a pretty good alternative to that. Where it's not as crazy as Path of Exile, but it's easily more complex and interesting to progress and build up a character than like Diablo at the moment. And yeah. I'm.
when is Diablo's expansion coming out? Because I know they kind of announced that earlier than I expected, and
I
it's
don't know if
sometime this year.
they.
I
Yeah, it's
think they
sometime
just
this
said
year.
this year and that's it.
I think they're aiming to have like an expansion out every year for that game, but I don't remember where I read that up. But there's also the Path of Exile 2 beta opening up later this year as well, and I think I will try. I will do my best to like. I wanna get into Path of Exile 2. It looks really cool. I like, and it looks not. It does. It looks like it's not as like crazy as Path of Exile 1. It feels like there's a good like overhaul that's still as complex but not as crazy. Maybe Path of Exile 1. Yeah, like a good like baseline foundation to like learn it from the ground up. That's eventually what I want to do in terms of like action stuff, isometric stuff like this.
Well, thank you, Josh, for covering the Steam suffering from success hit of the week
Yeah.
of Last Epoch. The last year it was always PC ports that just barely ran, and this year it's PC ports that have too many players.
Yeah.
Even I forget if it was in our podcast or if it was just in a Discord recording earlier in the week. But Adam and Mar, we have a brother who was playing Helldivers,
Hmm.
um, and basically was like, "I can't get online."
Yeah, I heard.
He wasn't following
Yeah, he's
all
one
the
of the
news
people
about it.
who
We're like,
they had no idea about this game and just heard about it because it's apparently exploded everywhere. And he's like, I want to play this game, but I can't.
yeah, he texted you that. It was like, hey,
Yeah,
did they fix the
yeah. He's
servers?
asking me if they
You and
fixed the servers. Like, I don't know. I mean, I would assume they
Adam,
are
an RPG
aware.
site. Why won't they fix the servers on my Sony published
Adam,
this game
please
on
fix the
Steam?
Helldivers servers. What are you doing?
The second game that we have listed here is another late February release, another game that we got the review up on the site just a couple days ago, and that is the new entry in Shiren the Wanderer. Shiren the Wanderer, the mystery dungeon of Serpentcoil Island. So this game released earlier in January for Japan, and then we had to wait a month here in the West to get it officially. And James was able to cover this game for us. I believe, James, you had a few opportunities prior to release to play this game, and then you were able to also just get the full Western release as well and wrote up the review for us.
Yep.
You talked
So
about your time with Shiren, I think, was it 4 and 6 a couple weeks ago? I know you
for
played 2 of them,
yeah, I played 4 and 5 previously. This
4
is
and 5.
Shiren 6. So
Oh, this is 6, not 7. All right.
yeah.
Okay.
So I did do the preview event. I believe it was last month. Yeah, I think it was January, which was my first opportunity to play the game. I enjoyed it then, and I was looking forward to getting access to the full version of the game. And so, yeah, we've had it for about 3 weeks now, and put quite a bit of time into it. I did some of the post game stuff, and I think my main takeaway in the review is that it's kind of interesting or fascinating because a lot of times when you get sequels to games that kind of simplify things, it doesn't really feel like it has a positive impact on the game itself. At least I feel that way. I feel like there's a lot of games that have tried to go a bit more simple with their follow-up releases, and I've almost always felt like it just makes the game feel a bit more hollow. But Shiren 6 is interesting because it removes a lot of features that like Shiren 4 and 5 had. Like it removes the day and night cycle. It removes the ability for like equipment to just get stronger naturally as you use them. And it's weird because the changes that they have made, like those stuff, like, and also like removing stuff like undo grass or escape grass, which means that you can't just like leave the dungeon if you're in a tricky spot. It makes it so it feels like that you're really forced to engage with the mechanics that are still in the game. And the end result is that even though there's less features on paper, like the average like playthrough, since you have to consider your actions a lot more than in like I feel like you had to in 4 and 5, and it's really kind of neat.
I think let's like establish a baseline. So for people who don't know Shiren, right, it's a pretty interesting like mystery dungeon sort of game where normally nothing will move unless your character moves. And so like just sort of baseline like for people who don't know Shiren the Wanderer at all, it's been around for
Let's start by
quite some
saying that
time.
it is
Yeah.
essentially a it was birthed out of a Dragon Quest spinoff, which is always sort of funny.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Torneco's
Yeah.
dungeon. So
So for people who don't know Shiren, like what would like be your kind of pitch to them on like what Shiren the Wanderer 6 is like? Say this is gonna be their first Shiren game. What can you
Okay.
say about?
so
Depending on their age, I might even say, "Hey, did you play those
Yeah.
mystery dungeon games as
like
kids?
that's a
The
Pokemon, game,
ones,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you play Digimon World?
Digimon World
2,
2 is sort of mystery dungeon-ish, which is sort of funny because like I never played Digimon World 1 or 3 or any other one, but I played 2 and I didn't realize until later like, oh, that pretty much is a mystery dungeon game. It is. I mean, with like a turn-based battle system though, but the dungeons
Well,
themselves.
Here's
So-
the real question. Did they play Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon?
I imagine a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I really should though. Is that on Steam?
No, that's
it's
one of
on
those Square
PlayStation
Enix.
and Switch.
That's one of those Square
okay.
Enix re-releases, remasters where they didn't do a PC port for some reason. I
Yeah.
reviewed it. It's okay.
But anyways, so yeah, like if you've ever played any sort of mystery dungeon game, just think of Shiren as a more hardcore version of those, because it's way more deliberate. I think deliberate would be the right word, because unlike in Pokemon, where obviously you usually enter with like a group of Pokemon, you have like special attacks and whatnot and all that sort of thing. With Shiren, every single time you enter in a dungeon, you're going to start from level 1, and most of the time you're going to start with nothing else. Maybe like a little bit of food, but that's it. And it's like, okay, you're going to have to go through this entire dungeon with nothing but your wits about you, and you need to make your decisions on what to pick up, what to sell, what to like use, what to... Basically, it's like, okay, the only way you can be successful in Shiren the Wanderer is by understanding what enemies and what their abilities are going to be as you're going through a dungeon, and you have to make a plan. Like, you got to think like 3 steps ahead. That sort of thing.
This new Shiren the Wanderer game, for people who've never played a Shiren game before, would this be an okay one to start with? Does it does it at least ease
It's a great one
newer
to start
new
with.
players?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's like
Okay.
like I said in my review, it's like as a consequence of them simplifying things a bit, they've also made it a point where they slowly dole out some mechanics as you're going through like your different runs. You'll have like these story scenes that at the end of them, you'll eventually get something that'll make it a lot easier to go through these dungeons. But it's also got the knock-on effect of, okay, if you're good at Shiren already, you can kind of breeze through these, and it's not that much like of a wait to get access to these features. But if you're new to the series, it offers a really good kind of like on-ramp to get used to how a Shiren game plays.
And to be clear, like the difficulty is part of the series' identity. Like this is
Yeah.
this is kind of the series kind of prides itself on like, hey, it's tough but fair. Like it's just you have to learn what the game is telling you essentially.
I think it's one of those games that it's... I feel like there's a lot of games that this is true for. It's not... I played only 5 for the first Shiren specifically, but it's like it's tough, but once you sort of learn, the patterns and like how to play it, it's really not too bad. It's just, I think it's sort of just a learning curve in terms of realizing how you're supposed to approach it. So
Yeah.
Did you? I know one of the new features that this also was in like the Theatrhythm's recent release, where there's this mode where as you're
The
traveling,
streamer overlay?
everything's
Yes.
just like at a glance. Did you use that a lot during your playthrough?
Yes. It's
Okay.
very useful because even less so for like, oh, if I'm streaming this, I can like everyone can see what's in my inventory. It makes it far easier where it's like, okay, instead of scrolling through my entire inventory when I open up, when I'm stuck in a tricky situation, I can just be like, okay, let me scan my entire like inventory, what Shiren's status is, and be like, okay, what is the least worst option to proceed?
Okay,
a lot
that's
of
cool.
times in Shiren is when you get stuck in a tricky situation, it's not figuring out the best option to proceed. It's figuring out what option has the lowest chance of me dying.
hmm
And that
So.
I'm trying to remember what that was. That's like less menuing. Like you can see some of your stuff in the corner of the window without having to pull up your inventory screen.
Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, that must be
I
a really useful feature for that for this kind of game.
I remember seeing that in one of the like gameplay trailers. I didn't realize it was like framed as like a streamer interface. That just seems kind of like, I suppose that's not. I wouldn't have called it that. Like that seems like a little bit meta in a way. I don't know.
Well, a lot more games have been doing that, and I mean it's smart. Like, and I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm not sure if the main reason why Shiren 6 has been blowing up in Japan is because of that, but I'm sure that it's helping because you go on YouTube and you look up Shiren 6, and it's like, oh, that sure is a lot of videos from YouTube, from VTubers about this game. I guess it was smart to include it.
Yeah, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe that's exactly what it should be called.
It's a smart audience to go after, and just like doing whatever you can to make like streamers who would want to promote your game's life easier without like downright kind of compromising on the vision.
Yeah, it's a win-win, and also like for a game like Shiren, it does feel like a game that benefits from going after that streamer audience because it's like it's very reactive. It's very much, oh shit, this happened. It's like, oh fuck, I'm in a monster house. Oh god, that I'm in a really sticky situation, all that sort of thing. So I think it was smart.
So in terms of like, I think for returning Shiren players who haven't played obviously a new one in forever, like what are some of like what's some of the new things in Shiren the Wanderer series that they'll like notice right away? That's like, oh, this is definitely different from past iteration.
Well, it's 3D this time.
Mhm,
Like
that's a big
Shiren
one.
4 and 5, which are like pixel art, which is a shame. Like one of the things I did mention in my review is that visually the game is disappointing. Not so much because of the 3D models themselves, but for whatever fucking reason, they looked at the Link's Awakening remake and specifically the terrible Vaseline filter they have for like a
Oh,
fake depth of field effect, and they're like,
mm,
we should copy that. And I know it's a fake depth of field effect because it's like it's so obvious it's not actually a real like effect. It's just a filter on top of the screen, and it just looks bad. It looks bad.
To kind of mention as well, I've also been playing the game.
okay.
Not as much as James has been, because I had a really funny situation I was telling James about where in the very first floor of my very first dungeon, I lucked out with some of the best gear you can get for like the first like half of the game. And I eliminated the difficulty so much so that I got kind of bored. But I can acknowledge that like what is here is still pretty fun.
Well,
But
that's
like,
Shiren. That's RNG, baby.
yeah, but yeah, it's not a looker. And James, this is only out on Switch, right?
Yep.
That's just so weird.
It's like it feels like a game that would benefit from a PC release, and I'm sure it'll get ported eventually.
Oh, yeah.
That's what
But
I'm expecting too.
But it's definitely I do miss the visuals from Shiren 5. I was gonna say Shiren 4 as well, but that game's character designs are, as I've mentioned in the past, very, very unfortunate. But visually, like the art style, the traditional like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon sprite style Shiren games are just like they look really neat. Definitely kind of liked that. And I want to be clear, like Shiren 6 doesn't look, except for the filter, doesn't look bad. It just looks
solid.
disappointing. Yeah.
Yeah, because those old games have such a like unique art style, and you've kind of gone to something a bit more generic that still is like good and like it. You will like. I wouldn't say the game's a looker, but I don't think the game looks like downright that bad.
I will say, considering the other Mystery Dungeon game that's on Switch, being Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team Deluxe, I feel like they should have gone for an art style closer to that, because like Rescue Team Deluxe had the very stylized like textures and whatnot. And I think that would have worked really well with Shiren. You kind of go for that watercolor, like kind of almost like calligraphy look. I think that would have been a smart move instead of what they ended up with, but yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see like when in a series' lifespan, like and that transition to 3D, how it's perceived. Like one of the more elegant examples is like from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 from Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where like they still were able to like maintain that comic book look in 3D, which translated well for that game, but less elegant example would be like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike to Street Fighter 4, where it had that ink facet to it with the focus attacks, but the character models themselves were very exaggerated. Everything was very round and muscular and cartoony, but it didn't really. It was like in that era where like everyone was still like, Third Strike had like one of the best like 2D pixel animations ever, and then going from that to like Street Fighter 4 is just like it was a big stark contrast and took a big adjustment period. So like what otherwise was an excellent game at that time. So I feel you on that. What's the performance like on Switch? Like, but these visuals are they still at a 30 FPS cap, or can they bump the frame rate higher on it for these visuals? Like, what's going on there?
I think it's hard to tell because of the fact it's like a turn-based game, but I do think it's 60 FPS. I do think it's 60.
Okay.
But it doesn't really matter too much though, because again, it's like it's not a game where 30 versus 60 would really be a major deal.
Yeah, because everything's still frozen at the end of the day until like you move, so it's still very menu based in a way.
Yep.
What were you saying, Brian?
I had two thoughts in my mind. I remember one of them and forget the other. The one I remember was like, I've played a game like this, Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission. That's basically a Mystery Dungeon game.
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember basically like also the art style. Neither you or Colin said this outright, but you kind of implied it. I think is that it's not that this art style is bad. It's just the Shiren 5 art style was quite good and endearing, and you've kind of lost that. You're kind of missing what you no longer have, and it's like this is what they replaced it with. It's not bad, but it's not what it was.
I'm just kind of in the I like sprites bucket.
The sprites are good.
And like I know we have like some of the HD 2D stuff, but I also kind of just like the more like classic sprites,
Yeah.
So it's just like I don't mind 3D games obviously, but I like sprites. That's pretty much where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Sprites are good.
Yep.
And then James did write up a review for Shiren the Wanderer, the Mystery Dungeon of Serpentcoil Island, and it's up on rpgsite.net.
Yeah, you gave it the same score as FF7 Rebirth.
And
Grand Blue Fantasy Relink.
So you're saying it's as good as those games?
And Persona.
Yes.
Persona 4.
We just give every game. We just give all games 9s now.
Yeah, there we go.
Except Banishers. That's down to 7.
That
Finally
that
freed
one
from the
guy
8
who
curse.
used to comment that we always gave 8s. Now we always gave 9s. Take that.
This has been a fucking strong year already for RPGs.
It's really funny how like, and I was saying this earlier on Twitter, it's like this year, for a lot of people, I can already tell they're going to be disappointed with the game releases, but it's like for us specifically, it's like, oh man, too much.
I actually saw that the Metacritic score for Shiren is pretty high, like high 80s, or it was. And I know Metacritic's not the end-all be-all, but just trying to get like what's the general reception on this game, just kind of a very broad stroke. Seems like people like it, so
that's really cool, because I know that previous Mystery Dungeon games like had a lot of issues like reviewing well. So seeing like Shiren just do as well as it has, like critically, is like, oh man, I guess folks are really starting to realize what this style of game actually is.
I'll wait for the PC release. I'm definitely interested in playing this, but it's gonna have a tough time because it's such a busy. Like I say this, but we see a lot of like other games like see success, already. But I think especially for Shiren because of its niche nature and being so close to FF7 Rebirth's release date, I hope for the best. It's already seen success in Japan, but it's not as well known outside of Japan as.
Most people are going to see the game's title and think that this is a totally new series because there's no number on it.
Yeah, but they did. They also didn't have a number on the Tower of Fate.
Tower of Fortune and the Dice of
subtitle.
Fate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I need to play more of the game. And I get my issue was it came we got our code in like right around when Persona came out, and that's my obsession. So I've just been playing that nonstop all through February. But it's a really, really like solid Shiren game, at least from my experience so far.
And then the third game that we have earmarked here is, of course, the aforementioned Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And like I kind of said at the outright, we'll probably introduce it here, but we're going to hope to get a few more people who had access to the game on potentially next week's podcast. Also, by then the game will be out, so anyone who didn't have access will be able to at least start the game as it releases on Thursday. So just for full disclosure, Josh Tolentino did cover the game for us at RPG Site and wrote up the review on rpgsite.net. Alex Donaldson, the RPG Site boss, did also cover the game on VG247 and wrote the review there. I had access to a copy as well as James, so we've been playing that over the last month, and you'll probably see a lot of guide features come out on the game for us. And then, of course, we have the demo that was just recently expanded to include the not only the Nibelheim flashback, but a snippet of the Junon area gameplay. Before we started recording the podcast, Josh, you had mentioned that you had started the demo, but you didn't really put any time into it. Did I understand that correct?
Yeah. So what I basically did is I downloaded this 50 gigabyte demo. I booted it up for less than 2 minutes, made a save, and then I quit because I just wanted like the goodies that you got for it. But I want to play the nibble. I want to play all that content in the full release. But in preparation for this release, I recently finished a replay of F7 Remake and Intermission just to refresh my memory. And so I'm good to go. I'm ready. I can be as ready as you
Yep.
can. Unless I already played like the original FF7 like I think like 4 to 5 years ago. So I don't want to do it again right now. And I was like, should I replay Crisis Core? I'm like, nah. It's like kind of thin plot wise. So like I don't need to replay that. I think.
I squeezed that in. Adam, when did I play that? I played that like early January before Infinite Wealth came out. And
Yeah.
I remember I was
think so.
kind of surprised at the time that, when Crisis Core Reunion was announced, people thought it might have like remake content in it. And it really didn't. It played it straight. It's basically just an up-res of the PSP game. So yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will do us maybe like a 10-15 minute introduction to it here. Of course, this introduction is going to be no spoilers. This is just going to be the same sort of stuff that you would read in our review up on the website or Alex's review on VG247. But we'll introduce it here, and then we'll kind of go full into it on next week's episode of the Tetracast, whether or not we can get Josh and Alex on board to record with us. So I don't want to. I guess I'll hand the microphone over to James to start out with, because James, you a few years back, you were kind of like marathoning through the Final Fantasy series. I think you made it all the way through the original FF7, and then you switched over to remake. Do I have kind of the history right there?
Not quite. So basically, I got through like Final Fantasy VI, and then I took that detour to Final Fantasy 11 with you for a bit, and then I kind of just I think it was like something happened, like maybe it was like a super busy time for RPGs, and it just kind of got derailed for a bit. So it's like I actually only played through the Midgar section of 7 in like 2022 or something, and then I put it down for a bit, and then I played through Remake last year, because we got invited to the TGS preview event, and I was like, well, I'll just play through Remake now because I've done the Midgar section of the original, so it's like, okay, whatever. And then I actually went back to finish Original 7 last month. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts so far on Remake?
On
Rebirth,
you mean
sorry.
Rebirth?
Yeah, Rebirth.
It's really, really good. I think my main problem with it is that I think that while the open world nature of it generally works, I do think that the area design in specific regions is a bit of a nightmare. I think that Josh too pointed it out in his review that Gongaga especially is just like an absolute nightmare. I agree with that, and I feel like you probably agree with that too.
Okay, so
God,
Josh and I are the
there's
ones in
more
here who haven't played this. Now, I've read Josh's review. I read Alex's review. Alex is our boss, but he wrote a review for VG247, and I've kind of read a couple of other impressions and whatnot. A lot of people really, really like this game, for sure. There are just a few things that I've kind of seen commonly mentioned here and there. One is that it is an open world game, and you have like 5 different open world zones, and that some are better than others. And if you look at it maybe cynically, you are kind of doing the sort of the same things in each zone in terms of what you would sort of expect in terms of fighting special monsters or collecting things or what have you. I don't know if that's necessarily a positive or negative thing, just more about that's a difference in game design in Rebirth compared to Remake for sure, which was more of a straight shot. But also being sort of like the middle game in a trilogy, I have heard some criticisms about like the story doesn't really have like a beginning and it sort of maybe spins its wheels, as I think how our reviewer put it, where it's maybe more character focused. Now, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's just kind of that middle game of a series story effect where it's maybe the plot kind of takes a back seat in a way for like character moments. Not necessarily again that's good or bad, but just being aware of that's what you can expect.
Well, I was gonna start with I really enjoyed this game, and when Josh did score it a 9, and he was flirting with the idea of a 10. We kind of discussed it and talked about like what do we think are pros cons relative to the remake, etc. A lot of things that came into mind, but obviously the text of the review is more important than whatever we ultimately decided on as the number. But when I was thinking about, because I was playing this game early, but not for review, but I was still kind of like bouncing ideas off him. I was kind of thinking, remember back to 2015, like the E3 of Dreams, where they announced remake. I think it was 15, and then Last Guardian, and then a few other things. I forget what all it was, but when people imagined what a Final Fantasy VII remake, lowercase, might look like, I feel like people would imagine in their mind's eye that it might look like what Rebirth looks like. In terms of one thing that I think Rebirth does really well that I don't think Square Enix has ever done that well before is just like the sheer variety of environments, of art assets, of just enemy variety. Like obviously Remake, the first game, kind of by default is entirely in Midgar, so they're limited in what they can do, either for better or for worse, in terms of what the areas look like, how open they can make it, the assets, the environments. We're here, it's the exact opposite. You start out outside of Midgar in the city of Calm, and Calm is like fully realized. In the original game, it was a handful of pre-rendered scenes, that a few tiles, and now it's like a multi-leveled, really like a believable town where you can enter like the market stalls and the shops, and then you go into the grasslands outside of that, and then you proceed on to the Junon region, and it's canon and the area underneath the city, and you go on into the desert and into the forest and into and basically the fact that every single area, Costa del Sol, is so fully realized, it makes the idea of Square Enix doesn't know how to make HD towns. I know that's like a throwback, and maybe it hasn't been true since maybe 13.2 was the first time they really had a chance to like with what was it called? Arcadia, Academia, whatever it was called in 13.2. But then like Final Fantasy 16 maybe kind of took a step back where they didn't really have much in the way of good exploration inside of their townscapes. It was more of a backdrop than anything. And you could argue that that was the design of the game. It was more of an action set piece game rather than an RPG in the style of Rebirth. But I think that's one of the things where Final Fantasy Rebirth really shines, is that these little areas that whether you play the original game or not, I think everyone here, including James, now that he's played it, has played the original FF7. So that's the mindset we're coming in from. And like, yep, this is Costa del Sol. Yep,
Yeah.
this is Junon.
So I was
And
talking
like
about this
this,
with another friend, and his basically kind of he had a similar thought to you, but framed a little differently. In that, basically, people like doing those. So I guess Final Fantasy 16, as I understand it, was a lot of like just cutscenes and combat, like not much in terms of exploration. I know there were side quests.
There was very, 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 very little reason to ever stray from the main path in a zone in FF16.
But Rebirth has exploration. It has mini games, tons of them, as I understand, which I know the original did too. And then has different characters you can use and all those other RPG components that I gather that seem to make it a fully fledged game, fully fledged RPG for sure.
I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to go into too much.
Right.
We just said
we're not trying to. I know people are going to be very careful
week.
about spoilers, but
I did want to say, just like the environment, exploring the environments, the cities was really enjoyable, and the open world aspect to it, I really don't think, as someone who almost lost their wits end at like Witcher 3, like all the points of interest and Dragon Age Inquisition. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, I do think strikes a slightly better balance. There's maybe like a dozen objectives in a region and then you move on, and then there's a dozen objectives and then you move on. So it's not like so overwhelming that you
How would you compare it to Forspoken?
It's better than like infinitely better.
That's huge. Holy!
But also, maybe I'll dig into this next week when we discuss in detail. But yep, mini game, and I saw some people say they really didn't enjoy it. I loved it. To me, it's. I know I'm not the first person to make this point of comparison, but I'll make it here for the recording's sake. It reminds me in a way of Infinite Wealth in terms of like, you're doing the main story, but how about this diversion here? You should try out this thing. If you do it, you'll get something that benefits you in the main story.
I've heard a lot of like comparisons to like there's like big like a dragon energy at some points in this game where like there's like there's like goofy moments in it that people compare it to like, oh, I've seen this as Yakuza or Dragon. But they try to like kind of emulate that style, obviously not replicate it, but it's in that same spirit or energy at times.
And then the thing is that like and this is the last thing I'll say on it before we put a pin in it for next week, is that the mini games, usually what they'll do is you're encouraged to play through them because they gave you material items. So you don't have to. Like for instance, in Calm, from the original game, you ride the dolphin up into Upper Junon, and naturally they turn that into a mini game. I think that works perfectly. And like if you do that, you can get some materia. And then there was one mini game that actually Paul, another contributor to the site, was like, I can't score high enough to get the time materia, the one that teaches you like haste and slow. Please tell me you can get it later. And we're like, yes, Paul, you can get it later. He's like, oh, thank God. So yeah, so being able to do the mini games will like they're just they're fun diversions on their own, and most of them are not to the same level always, but most of them are pretty well realized. I enjoyed them, and some of them can be quite challenging. But yeah, like yep, I did well in that mini games. Now I get time material earlier than
Brian. I think it's time. I think we need to talk about Queen's Blood.
So I was going to mention this too. I was like, I think this game's going to kill me because I keep on hearing nothing but praise for Queen's Blood, and I'm a big triple triad nut. So
well, before we do that, real quick, this game is made in Unreal Engine, right? This one is.
Yes, it's Unreal Engine 4.
That probably helps with the mini games because Unreal Engine is so versatile that it can do that. Like different styles.
Before we, or maybe like after we get into I guess that Queen's Blood thing. I wanted to talk about the part of the demo with like Nibelheim because I have played the demo. I didn't have a chance to speak up though. We can talk about the minigame first though. I just I have a perspective that I guess is unique for this call where I have played the demo. Like because Josh says they just skipped it, but
I'll say one thing about Queen's Blood, and I'll let James see if he's got any like key takeaways as well before we go into it in more detail next week. Queen's Blood is really fun. It is incredibly fun. I wish you had more players to play against. It's like I want to play it more because it's good.
Yeah,
and it's like
the one thing I've said,
and then you exhaust it.
Yeah, the one thing I've said, and like some other folks, like obviously, well, I don't know if Paul said anything about that, but I do know that Quentin, which they've been playing it for the gamer, But Quentin, when I said, I wish they would make a standalone Queen's Blood game with like multiplayer and like a proper like longer campaign, I would pay money for it. And they were like, yeah, 100%. Because like, really, I can't stress enough just how fucking fun Queen's Blood is. And like, I've seen a lot of folks that have played Rebirth already basically say the same thing. It is really fun. It is really good.
And then go ahead and talk about your time with the Nibelheim demo.
Okay, yeah. So I have been. I'm a massive fan of remake part 1. It like I was one of the people arguing that it should win Game of the Year on our spoiler cast. Our Game of the Year cast back in like 2020, which it did because I was really good at arguing.
I remember it came down to that or Yakuza 7, Like a Dragon. That was basically what it came down to that year.
Oh, okay.
But it's really interesting because the one thing I've been feeling while I've been playing through this demo is like I wouldn't fault them at all, knowing like the realities of like game design, to just iterate on remake, where just literally the Nibelheim demo section makes it very apparent how much they are like innovating on their entire formula, and the scope has expanded like a lot based off of how like linear and like tightly knit the original was. I have a feeling, and I'm kind of like avoiding reviews and stuff because I really this is gonna be like my game for the month of March. I'm just gonna spend all my time on. But I have a feeling this will be overall like a less clean package than remake, but probably a wildly more ambitious and enjoyable one. At least for me, because ambition's like a really big thing I value in my games, even if they do come with like a bunch of flaws. It's just the scope of like the places you get to explore, and then also just like the acknowledgement that the tone of FF7 like wildly diverts from how it was in Midgar, like in the original game, and then just staying true to that, because this is a pretty weird game, even from the Nibelheim section. Like, it has a lot of fun with itself. Sorry, go.
I was gonna say, no, it allows itself to be goofy and campy, and so was the original. So it's kind of faithful in that way. This isn't the DC grimdark reimagining.
No, not at all.
That's great. To be honest, I'm glad they didn't take that approach, because I think that's some of the bummer things that like when Advent Children came out. That's like they made Cloud way too like emo now. Back in the day when that
Cloud's
came out.
great in this game. I'll just keep it at that in terms of the sillier moments. He's great.
Nice. Yeah, I just bring up Advent Children now because there's like a rerun happening in theaters now, I think, for that movie. But I think I agree with you, Colin. And also, like, I really appreciate the development team's like approach and comments to it. Like when they think about remaking and re-examining what really resonated with fans of the original FF7. They said, a lot of that boils down to like being like almost like a kitchen sink approach of like exploring this world and having a lot of like different things to do in that world. That's just not the standard go here, cutscene, maybe fight, another plot beat, etc., and then moving on. They really, try to preserve that philosophy of like being able to engage in like different activities. You're not doing the same. Not all of them might be like amazing, but it's different to like break up the pace of like what you're doing on a moment-to-moment gameplay. You're always seeing something different, doing something different, and like going like, oh, like you can play this part or something.
Yeah, it's really weird because in a lot of ways this feels like the first modern Final Fantasy game that has truly gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it seem like I'm like throwing shade on all other like big 3D Final Fantasy games, but they've all been kind of like hampered in one way or another on like kind of recapturing that
sorry
vision.
to interrupt this really quick, but that's basically what I concluded when I did my Forspoken review last year. I was sort of like, Square Enix's like the open world for Final Fantasy 15 wasn't very good. It's not very good here, and kind of like, okay, well, 7 Rebirth is also open world-ish. Like, are they gonna hit it now? And it seems like they did. So Is that what you're kind of getting
Yeah,
at? The sort of structure of game.
Yeah.
So
it's just really impressive because like I've been a fan of like all the recent modern Final Fantasy games, even if like, you know, they all have their problems, and like I am a fan of 16. I think that game's really like fun for what it is, but just playing this and just like even this little small vertical slice, I've just been like, wow, they really did it. I am completely blown away. I cannot wait to get my copy in.
Yeah,
And I do have so much more, both good. I have a few things that I always want to put on like my critical hat and talk about a few things. Even though for this game I don't have that many, I want to talk more, but I'm just trying to keep it all for next week when you have more people on the cast. We go
put
into
it
more
down
depth.
somewhere so you don't forget.
Yeah, but
so what do you
basically,
think about the ending? That's a joke. It's not.
There's an
and
ending. That's spoilers. Relax.
Even next week, we're gonna keep it
we're
spoiler
not
free.
I wouldn't.
We'll
hint.
discuss,
No teasing. Yeah, there is an ending.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
We'll discuss like
There's
whether or
ending?
not we should talk about whether or not we'll discuss knowing the ending of remake. I kind of think we have to. Like, if we can't make the assumption that they know how remake ended, that makes Rebirth really hard to talk about.
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so,
a
okay,
big
so
spoiler for remake is on the box art of Rebirth, so
Right, exactly. So, just keep that in mind if you're interested in listening to us next weekend, talking about the game. Just know that it's going to be open season for at least FF7 remake. Spoilers.
Remake and maybe the original game, but of course we'll recontextualize then once we have the full cast and come to an agreement and state it very clearly on the cast itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no spoilers for Rebirth in any sense. But yeah, hopefully this was a fun enough tease. But yeah, James and I have really enjoyed the game. I know both Josh and Alex have also really enjoyed their time with it. So hopefully we can get all of us on board next week to discuss it at length. And with that, we'll go into the news section of the podcast with the other major thing from the week, of course, the surprise Nintendo Direct. Well, you could argue that it was heavily teased by those in the know, but it wasn't officially announced until last week and then held a few days after. And we had like pretty much every other Nintendo Direct, even though this was a partner showcase, we had a handful of things that were relevant to our coverage, with a very clear headliner here for us to talk about. Something that maybe we expected was arguably leaked a long time ago, and that is a re-release for an Atlas title featuring a new girl. That is Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance will be launching for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC this summer on June 21st.
can I just say how great it is that we live in an era of Atlas games now where they get announced and they come out a couple months after?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Like,
Well, I'm not sure
on
if
PC.
I'm not sure if this is the best example of that, considering like SMT5 was originally announced in like early 2017. It didn't come out until what, like
no,
late
but that's exactly
2021?
what I'm saying is we're not getting announced like, hey guys, a re-release is happening in like a year or so from now. Like, this is still them saying, hey guys, in 3 months you get to play SMT5 with like a whole new
frame
version
rate.
of it. Yeah,
Okay,
with a real frame
start.
rate.
So I reviewed the original SMT5. I like it a lot, but I do think the game has pretty evident strengths and shortcomings, even despite that I like it a lot. And so Atlas re-releases are nothing new, not even close. They've been doing this forever, it feels like. I even reviewed like Radiant Historia and Strange Journey, both also very good games with re-releases. With, how do I put this? Some re-releases are better than others in terms of how they incorporate the new content, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't add much, or maybe it's just tacked on or whatever. The way that they're approaching the new content here is very interesting in that basically what it sounds like is at the beginning of this game, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, you basically get to choose a route, like the original route or the new route, and they gave them names. The Canon of Creation is the original route, and then the Canon of Vengeance is a new route. And they say that the routes, like, obviously are gonna there's some similarities in like the story elements, but will diverge pretty significantly by the end, is how they put it. But I do think that's like an interesting way to frame it versus a lot of the other re-releases. Persona or Radiant Historia or what have you, where it's sort of like kind of tacked on in the end, like a last chapter or a direct to DVD sequel or something. So I think that's interesting in that it's basically like two separate versions of the game in a sense. I'm excited for it.
They make a choice early, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm extremely excited for this.
I was actually sort of wondering, like, have I soured on Shin Megami Tensei 5 at all? Then I like read up on this and see this trailer. Like, no, I'm pretty excited for this.
Yeah, I'm still pretty psyched. Like
Yeah.
after seeing like one of the main like things that like I really like SMT5, but the one of the main things that really frustrated me about the game is like you can just like misinput like battle commands if you're like
Yeah,
manually too fast in the game. Like the
it
performance of that
lags.
game on Switch is like frustrating. So it's like, hey, it is coming to like every fucking platform. It's like, oh shit, I can't wait to fucking play this on PC and fucking go balls to the wall insane with it. So this is a weird thing because like you mentioned, like they're doing the route split at the start, and then I believe even the canon of Vengeance, it'll have like its own set of unique multiple endings for
Right.
that. So how they're doing this is the DLC situation. And Shin Megami Tensei 5, it received like maybe 4 to 5 like not expansion DLCs, but they added like a new demon and like a storyline and like the demi fiend fight,
Yeah, there's a
and so
handful
forth.
of them.
So all that DLC, including like the Mitama DLC, is all bundled into this package. But there's also a new set of DLC for Vengeance alone that adds Dagda, who we last saw in Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, and a new newcomer demon, Konohana Sakuya, which most people in the Atlas community will remember that name from Persona 4 because that was Yukiko's persona. But obviously, it's always been an existing
demon
demon
version,
in Japanese, in Japanese mythology, so it has its own unique
It's
design. and
that's
everything.
apparently the goddess of Mount Fuji, which is sort of like this wasn't in the series before. Now, okay, I mean it was Persona, but not SMT. But yeah, so there's two new DLCs. They're day one DLCs, which is just kind of like Atlas DLC.
Day one DLC
I don't
on a
like.
remake is kind of
It's at least this is like the lowest possible. Got to give it to them that I could possibly do is that it's at least only a $60 game and not a $70 game because I could have seen that happen, but it's not.
Have they
I mean,
confirmed how much this is in the
It's
West
60.
though?
Yeah, it's 60.
Okay, because I haven't seen Western pre-orders go up because I've been wondering. It's like,
Yeah.
are you guys gonna try to sell this for 70?
Yeah, because
No.
the Persona 3 Reload was 70.
Yeah, this is 60.
Okay, so
but 60
so
with
this new
day one DLC. So yeah.
so so this is interesting. Like one of the new elements in Vengeance is like there's this new demon faction or new female demons called the Kaditsu. They're like a group of female demons. One of them is Lilith. There's 3 others that weren't named. They're gonna be like a new important characters, and then you also have a new character that joins you, a new female character that joins you, named Yoko Hiromine. And it's interesting because based on the shots, like she actually like travels around the Nahobiho
And
to
fights
some
with you.
extent and fights with you. And like we even saw like guest human characters in battle, which we haven't seen in a while for an SMT mainline SMT. Like you gotta have it on the fringes like an SMT4, but not like exactly like integrated into your party as guest characters with their own like life bars and so on. And then they also mentioned like part of the new content in Vengeance is going to be a new dot, which is like the new open zone. Like each of the zones that you explore in SMT5 are called dot, and a new dungeon, singular dungeon, which adds 100% more to the dungeon, one dungeon in SMT5. And
so with
my,
SMT5, one thing, there's a couple of things that I hope they like address in terms of like this could be tuned up a bit. I hope the dungeon is like got some modest dungeon like design and puzzle to it. I mean, that's really where the series came from. And I know a handful of people are really disappointed in 5 because it's not a dungeon crawler. I mean, clearly not. And I personally didn't mind like the Demon King Castle dungeon. That's the one with like had some air gusts and things like that. I felt that was just like light enough where it wasn't overbearing, but puzzly enough that it was still engaging.
Remember that puzzle was nerfed in a patch.
Yes,
as well.
I actually I forgot about that. It was nerfed.
Yeah. So
I never thought that was like Nocturne has way more difficult puzzles than that. But then, like for example, the final dungeon of the game, or like the penultimate dungeon in the game, is just like a bunch of white corridors with a friend of mine actually put it as with a bunch of linebacker Madas. That Mata
Linebacker
demon
Mata.
just like standing in the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Like there's
Uh-huh,
that
yeah.
dungeon is kind of honestly not very good at all. So one, if they made some tweaks to that, I'd be fine with it. And I kind of hope the new dungeon is maybe more interesting or more, involved. But
I imagine the new dungeon, like this is just my my assumption, is that is going to be like an actual final dungeon to the game for the vengeance route, unlike the original, which was a hallway
pretty
with
much
2 bosses.
Yep.
But it did have like the best grinding spot in the game as
But I'm honestly just more excited for the new dot. Like a lot of people say that like, oh, there's just like no dungeoning at all, and I totally get like no actual like real quote unquote dungeons, but I've always considered that the dots are just basically like they are more or less dungeons. Like they
I
are
wouldn't really call
little.
it. They're too open exploration for me to be like. When I think of dungeons, I think of Strange Journey. To be
No,
honest.
but that's the thing. I'm not viewing them as like exactly like, oh, it needs to be a dungeon because it's called a dungeon. It's just like it is like those spaces themselves are like places to solve puzzles and like explore, and like it feels like more active like gameplay than a typical like Shin Megami Tensei would have you just like travel from place to place. Kind of how 4 did it, where it turned like parts of Tokyo into their own kind of dungeons, even though they're like outside and like have larger spaces. So I'm just hoping that there's some cool visual variety going on in this new dot, and they kind of like make it a bit trickier to navigate.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was actually hoping. You remember the last dot in SMT5 where it had like it was kind of
The
up to you
blue
on the order of like, because there's like certain things you have to do around the map to like proceed forward. There's like bosses that you have to like take around the map. And it did it in a non-linear fashion. It was up to you to decide what order you wanted to do it in. I thought that was like a really cool like gimmick to that dot.
I actually said that. I actually said as much in my review. I basically said, first of all, 2 things I want to mention. One, in my review, the very first thing I said, like literally the first line of my original review was, Atlus has never made a game like Shin Megami Tensei 5. And I meant that literally in that, like, this is like the only open world-ish game that Atlus has ever made. Like, as far as I can remember, they've done a lot of like JRPG-ish, Persona-ish, dungeon crawler-ish, games, or you can go other genres entirely like Trauma series. But remember that series? Anyways, so this was kind of like their first go around at this sort of structure of game, and I think it was inevitably going to be a little bit some growing pains in that regard. But in my review, I actually said like by the time I got to the 3rd zone in SMT5, I was the novelty had wore off a little bit, because it's the first 3 zones in that game are all sort of similar. But just like Josh said, that last zone actually changes things up in that it's more non-linear. There's that big like sky blue block puzzle place, and it changed things up just enough to be like to kind of grab my interest again in that last zone.
Yeah, so, I think for everyone who went through that, it's like, man, I kind of wish this game had like more of this type of stuff, And then they have introducing some quality of life improvements to this vengeance. Like, so some of it is like speeding up skill cutscenes. So you don't have to see Aramasa for like the 50th time. You can skip it if you want. You can turn miracle functions on and off. You can reallocate Nahobiho stats. And the big one for that's contentious is the able to save the game anywhere. Which is
Why that's contentious?
Well, it's kind of contentious in the form of Josh and I complaining about skill allocation. Like, no, stop giving us conveniences.
Yeah, it's also like because some people want that tension of like, oh shit, I'm like in a bad spot, and how can I make it to the next save point? To kind of replenish what I need to do. Like it gave some stakes instead of just like, hey, there's a tough fight coming. I'll save here and then. So I mean,
I can see that.
Yeah, so I that's understandable.
I wonder if Nahobiho falling in battle is still a game over, though.
I don't think it has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be. That's like in P3 Reload. If it's still that, then I think this has to be still.
that literally got coined, at least in my circles, getting SMT'd. So like, if SMT stops doing that, we have to change the nickname for that philosophy.
They said there'll be like at least over 40 new demons. One of them is the Nahobiho from, what was it, Nahohino?
Nahobiho.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Which is the Jack Frost Nahobiho.
I'm so happy they're still doing that, making a Jack Frost based off of the protagonist. I want them to never stop. Hell, I want them to start doing it in Persona. Because it's always great to have new Jack Frosts.
Yep.
It's a pretty dumb fun gimmick. They're kind of going a little back to the vault with some of these reintroducing some of the demons. Like the cherub is coming back, but it's like the devil summoner design of cherub.
Yeah, I actually didn't recognize it when I saw it at first. I looked it up. I'm like, oh, I recognize the other version of cherub, but not this version.
Mm-hmm. Then you also have like interestingly, like some Soul Hackers inclusions, like Turbo Grandma, who we last saw Soul Hackers 2.
Yeah,
is also coming here. It is great.
Soul Hackers, the original, has a bunch of demons that are only in that game. Like, it's got a pretty unique demon roster.
I'm pretty excited to see who else they've like brought along for this re-release. Like, I have to imagine some of the like Mad Gasser is coming here because they already have the model for Soul Hackers 2. So I assume they're taking some from Soul Hackers 2, like Turbo Grandma. I assume like, oh, one of them might be Mad Gasser, which is cool because Mad Gasser is a great design.
There's one other thing that I hope they tweak in this a little bit. It feels kind of small, but I actually think it would be significant. I realized this about like halfway through my playthrough of the original. You can buy those items that basically block an element for one turn from your party. And the thing is almost every boss in that game does basically, I'm powering up for the next attack sort of turn. And that's basically just a clue to like use one of those items. So it almost felt cheap. Like, oh, I'll just buy one of these items to block the attack, and then it basically nulls their attack and gives me free turns or whatever. And I felt like those items that you could buy are way too cheap for how useful they are, and you can use them in practically every boss fight. Like, I think they just need to make these either rarer, more limited, or more expensive. Because otherwise, they're just kind of overpowered.
Yeah, I mean,
I had forgotten about those, but then I remember I was struggling on a boss. You're like, hey, just get these items and just use them. I'm like, oh. And then, they kind of trivialize a lot of the fights.
Yeah, so hopefully they introduce some rebalancing like what they did from like Nocturne to Nocturne Maniacs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that'll come out this summer, and not just Switch, so on all platforms, so it'll run at a good frame rate, at a good resolution,
and hopefully rail grind in this game now. Like, one of the new footage was like the whole rail grinding. It's like, all right, cool.
Because I have like brain worms, I'm very excited to see how that version runs on Switch and see if they've optimized it at all.
Okay, so here's this package might feel like a fucking ripoff to Switch owners, and I get it because this game like is coming out. You pay full price again. There's no save data transfer for it. The only thing you can do to like transfer over this, you can get like 3 demons from your demon compendium over from the base game to this game. And that's it.
Well, that was the same with like Persona 5 Royal, right? You couldn't transfer anything from 5 to 5 Royal. I mean, not saying that's how it should be. It's just that's
I mean, they've done this before, but it does feel like especially bad when like but I don't know how canon creation is like 1-to-1, but like if you wanted to like continue your save file for something, there's like no discount offer for people who already bought into the base game.
Well, so sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. They've been kind of weird about like how like if there is any kind of discount on offer, because they specifically mentioned how digital Switch pre-orders are going to be announced at a later date, which is not a hardcore defined like, yeah, guys, there's going to be a discount, but like that's so vague in what they're doing that I'm inclined to believe that there will be some kind of like maybe discount, and I really hope there is.
I don't know. We'll see. They're talking about Atlas here too. So
no, I know,
but
I'm
not optimistic. Yeah,
but this is like kind of a I don't know. It's I don't want to say it's a unique situation, but with like SMT5 being so fresh, I would hope that they would at least let you buy this for like, I don't know, maybe like $40 or something digitally. I guess we'll have to see, but I feel like if there was no chance that there would be some kind of discount, they would have just said it outright. So I guess in the next like month or two, we'll probably figure out if like you try to get this on the eShop, if you can just get a discounted version of it. I really hope so. It would be great.
That'd be great.
I will say though that based off of what's being added to this, it's almost like an SMT4 Apocalypse situation with the new route, at least going off of what they're saying.
Oh yeah,
I've seen people say
seems
like it
that.
almost feels like it's the original game and sort of like a sequel all in one. I know it's not really a sequel, but like, I mean, it seems like they're pretty much adding like a second version of the story. Unlike,
Yeah, because they've outright said, "Oh yeah, it's just as long as the original like campaign." And there's like an entirely new area and like a bunch of changes. So it's like, okay, yeah.
Now I'm gonna be the one reviewing this when it comes out, and there's a part of me that's like, okay, when I get this review code, should I like do the original version first to see if it's any like different, and then do the new route, or do I start with the new route? I don't know.
Replay the original version now and then do the new route.
Well, I kind of want to. I want to see like. I'm curious about like, is the canon of creation pretty much untouched? I mean, besides like performance updates, or
they said 160 hours for both.
Well, yeah, they said it was like 80 hours per route, which is that feels long because the original game is not that long. Even if
I don't
you,
think it is.
Even if you do everything, it's not.
I guess if they mean if you do all of the endings in the route.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And also you have to understand, Adam, it's it's kind of a similar situation with me where it's like I'll play a game and people say, "Oh yeah, it took me this long to play," and it's like, how? So
meanwhile, I'm the opposite. And I always take longer.
Because if I remember correctly, Shin Megami Tensei 5, there's 4 zones, and they're like, if you explore the zones pretty thoroughly, it's like 10 to at best 15 hours each, and even at 15 hours each, it's like, okay, that's 60, 80. I don't know. It's a lot.
Okay, so here's what you do: you speed run canon of creation, make it a 20-hour playthrough, then go vengeance.
So according to How Long to Beat, to do a completionist playthrough of SMT5 takes about 96 and a half hours.
Yeah,
so them saying it takes like 80 hours per route if you're doing like completionists for both, that makes sense.
I guess if you're not skipping cutscenes, you can get through that game really fast.
Oh yeah, I probably beat that game like 15 times.
Oh yeah, I'm at like 8 or 9 times. Because I was reviewing it for Nintendo Insider, our good friend Alex Seedhouse, and back then no one had any idea how to get that true ending, quote unquote true. And so I remember like before launch, I was like trying to talk to Adam and just be like, do you have any idea how like what you have to do to get this true ending?
The thing is like I think at one point we both got it, but we weren't sure like, all right, what actually tripped that? And turns out it's actually kind of simple. It's just if you beat Shiva or not. But
yeah, it's because I just didn't want to do that because I don't like fighting super bosses in RPGs. My own problems, but like. So I just didn't want to do that because it was also really hard. So I did everything else in that game, but but Shiva, and I kept going through playthroughs, being like, okay, maybe this choice is a little different, and this one, and then by playthrough 8, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do Shiva, and that's what triggered it for me after doing everything else. So,
that was like one of the really weird like true ending conditions because I don't think that's ever been like true for SFT game where it was mandatory to beat a super boss to
a super boss that is harder than the final boss hidden behind it.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like, I really hope the way they do routes in this new one is like completely different, and also I would be okay if they kind of took that requirement out of the true ending of Canon of Creation. So people can have an actually challenging final boss, or just make the final boss harder. of that route.
Here's what
Like-
they'll do. They're like, "Wait, we heard your feedback, and this time we're making it 2 Shivas."
Can you at least have Shiva show up next to the final boss?
So one thing
Yeah,
that
I just say
people
just steps out of the final boss's shadow. It's like, aha, it's me again. It's like, oh fuck.
It was me, Austin.
So one thing that people do
You're saying-
criticize SMT5 about a lot is its story, which is fair, but I also think like a lot of SMT games, especially like Nocturne, the actual plot really isn't the strong suit. Nocturne has better vibes, maybe, or has certain vibes. And even like the original version of Nocturne, like its endings are basically like 3 different flavors of the same. It wasn't until the version we got that added like the True Demon ending, which people is the one that people always go for. But I am curious, like Cullen said, I wonder how if they're gonna do any tweaking to like the routing or the endings of the original. I'm not sure because I said as much as my review. It's just sort of there. I don't weigh it heavily. That's not really the main reason I come to these games, but I'm curious to see if they'll touch it at all.
But that does like remind me, like all the story stuff they're showing off in this new route seems like a direct response to a lot of the feedback they got.
Yeah.
And it looks really interesting. Granted, we don't know too much about it for now, but there is like, again, it's in the title, Vengeance. The whole like gimmick is, and according to like some interviews as well, that they're trying to like literally talk about vengeance from like the like oppressed groups, which it's Atlas. They could go any way with that, but at least they're kind of playing with more ideas than the original game. And if like for some reason, let's say like Adam, for example, let's say you play through the Vengeance story and you just hate it. And you're like in another like Atlas re-release situation, they might have just kind of painted over the original, but we have both versions of the game.
Yeah.
Like, which is something I'm really happy about. Like, even if I don't like, I think I like the story of SMT5, but I don't love it. There's definitely plenty of things they could have like improved on. But I wouldn't want them to like get rid of that original campaign.
True.
Yeah.
So it's cool that we just have both of them here. One with this very like weird kind of like vibe where no one talks to each other, and that kind of like awkwardness is like for me a bit of a feature. And then this very like seemingly character-centric new story where all of the characters are acting like actual people and seem really mad just at everything. And I'm like, this conflict seems really neat.
I'm sort of in an interesting place to review this because I also reviewed Radiant Historia, I reviewed Strange Journey, and also like Devil Survivor 2, the 3DS re-release of that. And all those games kind of have like tacked on new endings. I remember like Devil Survivor 2, kind of like what you mentioned or like alluded to just now. I like that game, but it sort of feels weird because you get like the original ending and then it's just like, but wait, there's more. And it like this is the actual ending, and it's I don't know, the way it escalates from like the original ending to the new ending kind of feels false because in a way it sort of is.
You mean the new campaign with Record Breaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is weird. Like I just basically consider that its own separate thing because for it to work, it has to make up a new ending anyway. Like the end, because it's kind of based off of the Daichi ending. But one of the things about that ending is that Alcor, is that the anime name? I totally forget. But like the red stripy guy, he can't basically be around in that Record Breaker ending, but they just made a new ending where he like everything was happy and then he also was like around.
Yeah.
So I basically just don't like I consider that a fun little side thing. An excuse to see more Yamato because that's my favorite Chaos guy.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm interested. I'm excited. I'm gonna put so many hours into this probably.
I can't wait. I can't wait to replay SMT5 like 5 more times.
Second thing that we have listed from the Nintendo Direct is another game that's going to be taking up time in the next month. They announced a demo available for the upcoming Unicorn Overlord. This is the strategy RPG being made by Vanillaware, also being published by Atlas. And coming out on March 8th, but the demo is available now. And I know at least Cullen's been playing the demo. I think Josh either was or was interested in it. It's
I played it.
basically a 5-hour preview that translates directly into the main game. It's basically a 5-hour head start, is my understanding.
Mhm.
It's sort of weird. So one, I'm gonna get into this more later, but I'm really frustrated how they like announced this demo. But that's very specific to me and me alone. But the way this demo is like it's basically the whole chapter 1 of the game, but there's a time gate. So it's 2 conditions on how you end this demo. One is like the timer runs out. Basically, you have like I believe a 5-hour timer, but it does not tick when you're in menus. It only takes when you're like going around the map. So that makes it feel longer than what the timer indicates. Two, there's a certain character that gets kidnapped at the beginning of chapter 1, and once you rescue this character at the end, that also triggers the ending of the demo as well. So there's a lot of like side content that you can do before you go tackle this main objective in the demo, and that's where you kind of rack up those hours because there's already right from the get-go so many places to explore and like recruit people before you go
Very
tackle this
expansive.
objective. Yeah.
I'm quite enjoying it. I'm taking my time. I'm very glad to know, because I was a bit worried if like you were on a kind of behind the scenes timer to save that character. But knowing that's just the end of chapter 1 means I'm definitely going to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah. You're not. Yeah, you're not like peer pressured into like, hey, you have to go save this person immediately. It's like, no, you can go take your sweet time. So before we go into the demo, I just want to say that like the way this demo was rolled out was kind of weird because they announced it at that Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase, and that the way Atlas was marketing it made it seem like this was an exclusive demo for the Switch for like the first 8 hours. So like I was under the impression it's like, oh, it's an exclusive demo. This is not the first time we've seen this, So it's like, oh, okay. And they even indicated like in the trailer only the Switch logo, even in the description and the YouTube name only the Switch. Even in the YouTube description, it was only the Switch at the time when I was writing this article. It wasn't until like 8 p.m. that night, Adam, where they like updated it and notified us that like, hey, it's also coming out on PlayStation Xbox on February 23rd. To the extent that like they even updated the YouTube description that I took wholesale for the feature. It's like, oh, now they just added that little tidbit in it. And it was like
it's very apparent that this was a timed exclusive demo announcement, which is kind of frustrating.
I was like, okay, well, great, awesome.
Like it was very deliberate that like, okay, we're going to announce the Switch demo now, and then we're going to announce the other versions later, and they're coming out in a couple of days, which they're out now, but still, it's very frustrating when we're trying to be like accurate and correct when we're like getting the information staggered like that. Yeah, I totally understand the annoyance for sure.
Yeah. When you think about like, oh, remember the Persona 5 Tactical Persona 3 reloads only for Xbox, and then 2 days later, it's also coming to all other platforms. Like, cool.
Or like the Persona 5 port, they announced that.
Oh god,
like,
yeah.
They announced that like Xbox first, and then PlayStation, PC, and then Switch, like at 3 different times, and it's just kind of like, come on.
So anyway,
Adam, sorry, I want to indulge in that a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
Like a Dragon 8 is going to come out on platforms. Then when it was announced it was Infinite Wealth, that's only going to be on Xbox for like 12 hours. Like we already announced this for all the platforms. Stop pretending. Anyway, sorry.
So Colin, I want to hear it from your perspective because on what you thought about Unicorn Overlord demo, because it's like there's a game that like you didn't know what you're getting into, like from going into it. So I'm curious to see where you're coming from on this one.
So I have actively been avoiding every single thing about this game because I figured I'd hyper obsess over all these kind of games. I kind of want to just be surprised about what this is, and also because we were talking about this in the last like couple months in our staff channel. Basically, it's like a lot of people are not going to probably understand what they're getting into with this game. And I was like, well, I want to be one of those people.
Yeah.
So I just went completely blind on it. So it's very interesting. I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I definitely feel like there is a set of people who will go to like kill you if you try to imply this is similar to Fire Emblem in
It's
any
totally
way.
fair to like make those comparisons not to your frame of reference. That's
Yeah.
totally fine.
But and I would not I don't want to imply that this is like a Fire Emblem ripoff, obviously, but it definitely seems like there's a bit of a Fire Emblem DNA in here with a bit of, from at least from what I understand, ogre battle, right?
Right.
Like ogre battle as kind of its core way of interacting with the world. It's really interesting. I'm kind of whatever on the story so far.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, the story premise is very bog standard. At the very beginning, you're like you have this protagonist named Elaine. He's very young, and then it's like it's in the middle of like a insurrection where your mom's the queen. She's there's a traitor that tried to usurp the throne. So you gotta get shuffled away by one of your loyal servants for the next 10 years, while the fate of your mom is kind of unclear. But there's a new evil empire that has been constructed in the meantime in that decade. And so now
casting magic evil person spells that make people evil. And I
Mhm.
rolled my eyes to the back of my fucking skull and was like, "Oh, Kiseki curse, we're back, baby."
So yeah, one of the very, very, very early opening cutscene things is like as part of the tutorial in this game is like to understand the game systems. Like that evil empire is now like kind of making its way toward your island, where it's like obviously trying to scope out things, trying to find like this prince that has been, shuffled away. So to make sure that like there's no threat to the throne whatsoever, no sort of like revolt that will happen. So one of the people, a part of that scouting group, is like what used to be one of your like loyal retainers to your mom, the queen. And then like obviously once you like beat him, it's like, oh, what happened to you? What made you so like this? And then you have this ring of the unicorn on you that like shines, bright aura. It's all of a sudden it's like, oh, my mind's so clear. Like I've been under this spell for like 10 years, and it's like I feel so bad, and like and that person like joins you.
Yeah, he's like,
And
"I
so
did
on.
so many terrible things and I don't remember any of them." And I'm like, "Okay."
So it's a very yeah, and then right after that one trope happens, another trope happens where like one of your people gets kidnapped and you have to go rescue that person as well. So okay, so it's all like
Look,
narrative.
all I need to know about the narrative is if that ring had the power to undo the evil mind control, why did she give it to the kid instead of just hanging on to it for that battle?
Well, the people in the battle, I don't think were mind controlled.
I
See that.
believe
Here's the
so,
thing:
yeah.
when you introduce a plot point like that, you then immediately assume, okay, so all the bad guys are going to just be like mind controlled evil, but that's not true. So it makes me wonder why they bothered to begin with. If only some people are mind controlled bad guys, and then you have some side stories where you just have like it's honestly typically it's like you beat them and they go, well, my family was poor and my sister got sick. Uh, general like understandings of why abuse of power kind of fucks over people at the bottom, and that's why they commit like the crimes they are just to get by. And it's like, okay, that's interesting, but again, why are we doing Kiseki curse magic for only some people?
Yeah, so like there are definitely like I right now that I see it like the plot premise is just like an excuse for the game to like happen right
Yes,
now, and,
which
and
very
that-
much in the Fire Emblem lineage in that way.
yeah, so this game plays very differently from like I'm sure what Fire Emblem people are expecting, and
Oh
definitely
yeah,
yeah. So
bit of RTS in here, but not enough RTS where I don't like it. So that's very helpful because I'm not an RTS guy.
yeah,
But this does like the way battles play out, where you essentially like in a Fire Emblem like game, you have your two units, and then I'll kind of like roll some dice, and then what you've kind of like decked out your guys with will decide how the battle goes out. This basically lets you take a screwdriver in and like open it up and then like adjust a lot of different things to make battles play out more in your favor, because it's not like one character versus one character. You set up a squad of like multiple units, and then you can set a gambit system like mechanic on all of their AI to have like their actives and their passives like go off at specific times. and like play out like if one of your characters has a like health less than a certain amount, then you can have one character cast a spell on them, but you can set that in a list of priorities as well. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
And as a game, I'm like loving it so much so far that I really don't care if the story ends up being whatever.
Yeah. I think I'm starting to follow that line too. Like, hopefully, for me, like, hopefully the story gets better. But I just find like cool, interesting, fun characters like join me, and like the game itself is like it's very very solid. Like to me, it's like a great like modern interpretation of the ogre battle formula. So for people who want kind of like a more detailed view of it, like for example, one of the very early stages in the game, still tutorial, where like you have to go defeat the enemy commander to beat this stage. So you start at like the northeast and you have to travel southwest towards this base. You can deploy troops that you already configured from like this home base, starting base, and like it'll cost them like one valor point to deploy, and then you can use like an in-game cursor to mouse over them and direct them. Hey, move here. Go to this incoming enemy that we're about to run into on the way to this enemy commander. So as Colin was saying, depending on like the unit formation and what kind of characters um, fill in the squad, they'll have like inherent advantages and disadvantages depending on like what sort of enemy squad they're facing up against. And yeah, and you get, and it's not like you're informed ahead of time like how much health they're gonna lose and how much health you'll lose. So when they clash into each other and you see that battle happen, you can fast forward it and eventually skip it if you want. Um, but whoever takes more damage in that confrontation is pushed back and put into this waiting state. So you can attack them again, and then you'll have initiative through a first strike, which will ostensibly pretty much kill them because they can't trigger active or passive points, which kind of determines your actions in battle.
Josh, do you
And
want to know something I found out on accident about that?
what's up?
You can push enemies into allies and like immediately start a battle.
Oh, that's funny. I'd like you just ping pong them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
and
great.
I was like, I want to let you finish, but another neat
Yeah.
thing is like, let's say like an enemy runs into one of your guys who's near a couple other like squads. You can cycle through everyone in that radius and decide who you want to take the fight, like
Oh,
take
yeah,
that
yeah.
hit.
Yes, yeah, good point. So, okay, let's say like, oh no, they're attacking someone that like they have way the advantage. They might like get to the very low health or kill them. It's like, oh wait, I have another squad here that's like near them that like you can swap to and they'll attack them instead. So and they'll have better odds against this incoming attack and come out victorious or at least advantageous out of that encounter, which is really nice. It encourages positioning your allies to help one another. So you're marching your troops into like these other bases on the way to this enemy commander, and you can once you clear out that all the enemies nearby, you can go into like this town and garrison and gain more valor points to deploy more squads that you haven't deployed yet because you didn't have enough valor points at your starting base to do it. Now from here on, in this specific tutorial fight, you can go bum rush to the enemy commander and finish the mission, or you can go take like another side path, some of your troops, and go liberate more bases to gain more valor points because you can use valor points to activate like leader unique skills. So like each platoon has a leader, and depending on like their class, they'll have unique valor actions. So one can like do a heal, one can like steal if like a thief class is the leader, they can go steal gold from an enemy.
Some
Uh,
leaders, if they're a certain class, can have better movement options on the field.
right. Um, so you can go that route instead. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that a unit cannot infinitely keep on attacking because they have stamina points above them. So like say a unit has a squad has like 3 stamina points left. They can only attack 3 more times before they're forced to rest. Because if you completely deplete your stamina, you can no longer move or take an action. So you need to make sure that they don't completely deplete their stamina and you have to either let them rest, so like retreat back somewhere and get some space from the enemy, because during this rest period, they're super vulnerable to enemy attacks. Um, so you have to keep that in mind. Another thing that's pushing you forward that you can't turtle indefinitely in battle is there's a time limit in battles, and this time limit isn't like super strict. In expert mode, it is kind of demanding, but this time limit is making sure that you cannot just like farm off like infinitely off of reinforcements. You're constantly being uh, encouraged to be aggressive towards the enemy, making like a calculated tactical march to your to getting the objective done in a timely manner. So it's not like the time limit is there to like kind of make you freak out. It's like, oh no, it's super strict. It's like, no, you just have to keep on moving forward at a steady pace to do so. So you kind of have this tug of war mechanic between like managing that time limit and your units stamina points, and making sure that you have like um you're putting yourself in a position where you won't get like surrounded, or having a unit like be um totally like overwhelmed by like incoming squads in front of them, and they're left on a, like solo and no one's nearby. um and of course, um as you play on through the demo, you'll be able to get more options of different characters, different classes, and as you level them up, like Cullen mentioned, you have like this gambit system where you can kind of program if then statements to certain character, like each individual character, like a super simple basic practice that people will want to probably do is setting multiple passive skills, like the same passive skill but different condition requirement. So, for example, like your um hero character Elaine, he has this really good skill called Luminous Cover, and you can manipulate that in like different slots but with different conditions. So like you can trigger it if like uh an infantry is attacked by an archer, says that that's your trigger condition to do that, and then you can trigger, and then you can set another different condition. So do Luminous Cover again, and say like this infantry is attacked by a caster, and then you draw trigger that. So you have like you can finally control specific actions but different conditions to ensure that you're always consuming a passive point, because you want to make sure you're trying to get the most out of like the resources that you have in battle. It doesn't have to be this finely tuned, but it's something that you keep in mind and make sure that like, hey, I'm ensuring that I'm expending the resources because these replenish every single time I get into a combat encounter. So I might as well try to get the most mileage out of them as I can, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's just like there's so much, like so many systems and mechanics to this game. I'm just kind of like really impressed and excited
Mhm.
at just like how much there is to tinker with.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely brainworm central for tactical players who've been kind of itching for like who like messing with combat systems that have like a gambit system. It's not like you're not actively controlling characters mid battle, but you're planning out their moves in advance before the fight even begins. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's really neat because to go back to what I like mentioned earlier, there really is nothing like this currently on the market. Like
Mhm.
even if this is based off of a lot of like older SRPGs,
Yeah,
nothing I've played in the last couple years like does SRPGs like this, and I'm really enjoying it.
that's cool.
I'm I'm struggling because I don't want to play too much
Right.
because I will be reviewing it for us.
Mhm.
And I do not currently have the game yet. And it would be suck to like blast through the first like 5 hours and then just be stuck waiting because I can already tell this. I'm just gonna sink a bunch of time into this one.
Yeah, I hear you. Like the demo is like a blessing and a curse, yeah, with its
Oh yeah.
timing, because Rebirth is like there, like in the way as well before its official release too.
And
So
for anyone maybe worried about this like 5 hour time limit, they are pretty lenient on it. Like the prologue is not timed, and then whenever you're in a menu, it's also not timed.
mhm.
So it actually is like a decent chunk of game you get access to with this demo.
And to be clear, for people who are like maybe kind of hesitant on this because of the real time nature of it, you can actually pause at any time in the middle of battle to like kind of map out like where you want things to move. You can always pause, it'll freeze everything. It's sort of like that FF7 remake, like classic system where you can just like pause everything to like kind of map out actions in advance, so you're not like always having to be like thinking on the fly and like making like last minute like moves to on an ongoing battle. It's like no, you can pause at any time and instruct units to do whatever you want to make sure that you're not feeling too pressured.
I cannot wait to play more of this. It actually has me in a mood to play like other SRPGs on my backlog. Just so I can like push this off as much as I can and just get the full version. Like I'm reinstalling Tactics Ogre Reborn right now. I actually started Sacred Stones.
Nice.
Which is very neat. I typically do not like older Fire Emblem games. I'm a dirty casual who started with Awakening.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
And I also have Path of Radiance lined up that
Okay.
I'm interested in trying because I think Ike is very cool. But
He fights for his friends, I hear.
he does.
Oh.
And apparently he has a boyfriend. I'm looking forward to that.
Thorin is
He
also
does.
cool.
But like, yeah, no, I've been waiting for SRPGs to kind of I guess activate my brain worms in a while because unfortunately Engage did nothing for me, and that remake of Front Mission 2 was embarrassing and still has not been fixed.
I lament that because I really like Front Mission, but just seeing the state of those remakes, man, I'm just like, it makes you cry a little inside.
I haven't checked up on the updates recently, but I'm pretty sure they have not fixed the localization, which looks blatantly like AI translated.
Hey, Colin, you know a tactical RPG series you should give another shot?
I feel like you've done this bit with me before, but for the sake of the podcast, I'll bite. What, James?
You should play Utuara no Mono.
Oh, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. I've tried it twice. I don't like those games.
Damn.
Maybe one day. Maybe I'll watch the anime of the first game, which again I just don't like straight up.
Yeah, the first game is like I remember after I finished Prelude, my takeaway was this is not enough, like a good enough tactical RPG for me to recommend people actually play it instead of just watching the anime adaptation.
Here's what's gonna happen. Yeah. Vanillaware will make a better Utaware Rumono, and then you'll get in the mood of Utaware. There you go.
James, here's how I'll bite a little bit though. How are the games on Steam Deck?
They're perfect. They're perfect because the main problems with the PC ports. The main problems with the PC ports was the fact that they were locked at 720p. That doesn't matter on Steam Deck because you're not going to run them at anything other than 720p. So,
did Deception and Truth come to Switch?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, that answers that.
And those games have been delisted from PlayStation, right? Or
yes.
Yeah, because
Prelude, I believe, is still on PlayStation. Yeah, I believe Prelude is still on PlayStation, but Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth are not. So basically, if you want to get into the series nowadays, your only option is either buying physical copies of Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth, or just playing them on PC. So,
wait, did Prelude get delisted from Switch?
It was never on Switch.
I could have sworn it came to Switch at some point, but I think
you're probably confused because
Vita.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember now.
Oh, they're perfect on Steam Deck. They're a perfect airplane game because if you have a lengthy flight and you want to go to sleep and you can't sleep, you can.
Although I definitely would have to like get the window seat so I could like hide in the corner and so no one could see the embarrassing game I'm playing.
Just share with your passengers like, hey, look at this anime girl with the animal ears.
You want to see boobs? This is a great first line to talk to a stranger with.
Yes, exactly.
But I will wait to see when Mask of Deception goes on sale on Steam, and I will try to give it another go.
This conversation has also reminded me that Tactics Ogre Reborn is like squarely in my backlog, and I hear that game takes like 100 hours to beat.
I love Tactics Ogre. I haven't played that version yet.
I know it's apparently divisive amongst fans of the original.
It's like it's mostly good, but there are some weird.
Josh's
additions
takeaway
to
was
it.
that you never really liked the cards too much, or at least just acknowledging this makes it very different.
Because there's a new element in the game where like they spawn like card buffs
Right.
in battle, and then it's totally RNG what spawns where. For as I know, there's no rhyme or reasons, and they shift the tide of battle pretty significantly, um, depending on like if you stock up on them or ignore them. So that was like not my. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the game's like more. It has a weird flow to it, but with the addition of those, which is not, it was one of my few big criticisms of that version. But other than that, it's still a fucking masterpiece of a game.
I gotta play more. I stopped playing because I got to a level that was just really hard and I couldn't grind anymore. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, I guess I'm done.
Yeah, you do need to not grind, but like it gets pretty punishing if you haven't like leveled up some of their like core mandatory people that will catch you off guard. Like some stages, like I'm deploying. It's like, but dude, you're like, I didn't really pay attention. It's like, nope, I'm deploying. I'm like, okay, well, all right, fair
With
enough.
me, it was like I got to this like snowy mountain stage. I
Mhm.
have no idea what it's called. And all of my units were like completely maxed out at the level cap. Because
Uh-huh.
like for those of you who don't know, like they have a like stage by stage level cap in Reborn because they don't want you to level up too much.
Yeah.
But they let you like grind up to that if you want to. But like everything was just killing my entire team anyway. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do with this then besides be better at the game. And I don't want to do that. So
Yeah, you do like it'll be
Get good? No, thank you.
yeah,
yeah,
there'll be at a
game
point where
tells
you
me
have
to get good. I tell it to go away.
Yeah, it can get pretty punishing for sure.
But I'm really looking forward to Unicorn Overlord. It seems like everything I was wanting in an SRPG, and really just hoping the story delivers.
And for people, like there's multiple difficulty levels as well for people who are still kind of like, oh, I don't know about this game. It feels is it super punishing? It's like there's 3 difficulty levels. You can bump it down to easy, and you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine.
My the bar I want Unicorn Overlord story to uh meet and go past is Triangle Strategy, because that was the last time I think we got one of these big like SRPG revivals, and I thought the story of that game was just really middling.
It depends on the route for me in that game. Where there are some routes in Triangle Strategy where like it's kind of dire, and then you kind of have like this true ending, which is like I don't like the I don't like true ending being like the canon. Like oh, there's clearly the ending it was supposed to, or it was that's tying everything up very nice and loose. And
I totally forgot they made like an epilogue update.
yeah, they
Like
did.
like half a year later, right? And
Yeah,
it's just a cutscene.
For Triangle
that's so
Strategy?
weird. Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, I watched it. It's kind of nice. It's just like I'm not sure why they decided to add this later, but sure.
See, I would have had to replay the entire game to like get the true ending of that, and I was just so mad that there wasn't any kind of like flowchart system, because I'm pretty sure that is something Tactics Ogre does, right?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
you can just go back to specific points.
yeah.
And that game is so obviously trying to be Tactics Ogre. So it's weird that they would do this like big root system and then not bring that over. And I was like, "Oh, you want me to replay this entire game again?" No. No, I'm good.
People
I'm
will
not
tell
doing
you if you
that.
just manipulated everything in your first playthrough perfectly, you can just get the true ending on your first playthrough.
Yeah,
See, the
I
thing
tried
is,
that.
And then
but
make it stupidly hard too because true ending
It's
scaling
not balanced for it.
is yeah.
and you have to have enough. I forget what the 3 different
Oh yeah, the different
emotional
like
judgments are.
yeah.
But like one of them, in order to meet the threshold, you just got to do the random battles and do like a certain skill over and over again to earn enough. Like I don't know what it is, compassion, whatever. It wasn't fun. And Josh at the time was like, "You shouldn't do this," and I'm like, "Whatever." And now I'm like, "I shouldn't have done that."
there are better games to waste your time for.
Yeah,
I like
it was a
Triangle
decent
Strategy.
game.
I like
And it had really good music.
Yeah?
But
It
yeah,
won.
Oh.
I love its music so much. I fought for it tooth and nail.
The last major announcement from there's more than one more announcement. The last major announcement in our purview from the Nintendo Direct was the announcement of a Gundam Breaker 4. Now,
I
I
like how
don't
you
know.
I like how you put this as major announcement just to appease me because no one else on Earth will consider
Hey
this a major
now.
announcement.
Hey now, I
You
think it's
and Kite.
major. I think
All
it's
right. Okay.
major.
So I'm
Okay,
going to
thank
explain
you.
my layman's understanding of this. So
Okay.
Gundam Breaker is my understanding. There are 3 games and they are really relatively well received. Then there was New Gundam Breaker, which I don't know what was new about it, but apparently was terrible. So because this is not New Gundam Breaker 2, but is instead Gundam Breaker 4, this one's actually good. This is my understanding.
Oh, that's a decent understanding of it. There's also after New Gundam
Right.
Breaker, if also what mega hiatus because they had Gundam Breaker Mobile that ran for like 5 years, and it's like, oh, okay, this series is fucking dead. So this coming out of nowhere is a genuine like miracle and surprise. When I saw like this direct partner showcase was like a VOD, so it wasn't live streamed live. You had like a full list of all the announcements right here, and you could just skip to any part of the video. So when I think Adam or someone else in the staff chat put up like the list, I was like Gundam Breaker
Oh
4. I'm like
yeah.
this. What
So
the?
what's sort of funny is that like the Japanese Nintendo Direct and the American upload, like the Nintendo of America, they don't have timestamps, but the UK upload does. So like the very first thing I did, like as soon as the Nintendo Direct dropped, is I just like screen capped the timestamps. Like here are the announcements, and looking through them, it wasn't none of them were like too surprising. Like okay, there's Vengeance that sort of leaked, and like wait, Gundam Breaker. That was the one
Yeah,
that stuck out to me because
yeah, I was like,
no one
what the?
expected it. I knew what it was, barely, but like I don't think we were expecting a Gundam Breaker announcement. So like
No,
immediately as soon as the Nintendo Direct dropped, like probably within like 10 seconds, I linked it to Josh like Gundam Breaker. Like what is
I
this?
was like question mark.
So
I don't fucking know. So and like the only thing that would have like hinted at this, which is wasn't really a hint as all, was the but they shut down the Gundam Breaker mobile game like maybe a year ago or two. I forgot already. But it's like for me, it's like this series is fucking dead. um.
Because no one
So
liked New Gundam Breaker, right?
no, I didn't. I can't speak for everyone, but it was a big step down from Gundam Breaker 3, and anyone who played Gundam Breaker 3 invited to that, they were all like, nope. It wasn't good. Like so I won't get into why it wasn't good. You can read my review. I gave it a 3 years ago. I just have very little to say about that. So this game, you can tell that they're trying to erase Gundam Breaker or New Gundam Breaker from ever existing because this game right away looks like Gundam Breaker 3.5, like in terms of presentation and font work and just like everything about this game. If you played Gundam Breaker 3 before, it looks like Gundam Breaker 3 if you're just like looking at a menu at this game and you're like, oh shit, they're actually going for it. And for people who are into Gundam Breaker, like that's all we could ever ask for is like a more expanded version of Gundam Breaker 3. Obviously, there's gonna be like a new storyline, new everything. Obviously, new additions to Gunpla that you can use and new gameplay systems. But for people, it's like we just want a bigger and better Gundam Breaker 3, and this is sort of what it's going for. So the Gundam Breaker series is basically the main gimmick of it. Is building um, your own Gundam, your own specialized Gunpla. There's different heads, different chests, different arms, different legs, and all sorts of like gameplay systems. Like say, hey, you equip this, say Gundam Exia chest, so now you have the option to go Transam with this Gunpla. Because that's something that from Gundam Double O that the Exia can do. So that's why if you equip this chest, you can now use this system, and that has gameplay implications for you. If you equip like the backpack of like the Victory Gundam, you can now use the Victory Gundam's Wings of Light because you have its backpack on you, and so forth like that. Um, and one of the big changes they're doing in Gundam Breaker 4 is typically in past iterations when you equipped arms, it was always that same set of arms. So both of your arms would be like the God Gundams, or the Wing Gundam, the Wing Gundam's arms. It always came both in a set. In this one, it lets you manipulate a unique arm for left and right arm, so you can like kind of like even make even more crazier looking gunpla. Like I'll have the Zagok's claw arm for my right arm, and then for the left arm, I'll have Gundam Dynamis's left arm because it looks cool and this looks rad as fuck. And and because you have two separate arms, they're also allowing you to dual wield unique unique weapons per arm. So I could have like let's say this sword for the right arm and like this I don't know, this whip on the left arm. And so now you have like you have like separate actions per arm in the middle of combat, where like square is like your right arm and triangle is like your left arm. And if you have and if you there's also two-handed options for like if you equip this two-handed like sword, it'll play more similarly to like the Muso action. Past titles were like it'll be light attacks on square and heavy attacks on triangle for this dual-handed weapon. Um, Another big thing change in this game is it's bumping down the player limit from 4 to 3, which is
I didn't know that.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it because like it's already chaotic as is in multiplayer. So if they find a better balancing act while making the screen not as like visually cluttered, which is that's fine. Personally, I'm not too bothered by it. The one cool thing about this game that they showed off in a later live stream is that the lobby system in this game is totally overhauled. It's not like in Gundam Breaker 3 where you have kind of like that faceless pilot going around this very small hub, and then you just see your big gunpla like displayed. Your gunpla itself is the character going through the lobby, and the lobby is sort of like Phantasy Star Online or like Monster Hunter World, where it'll support up to 24 players in that lobby. So you can just see people, you're like a community or you're like your group of friends, like customizing their gunpla in real time and like making all sorts of adjustments. So you can just like see each other. It's like, hey, check this shit out. Look what I made. Um, and then people can go form their own three player groups to go the play on stages from that same lobby. Um, and that sort of stuff. There's all sorts of like minute systems that they showed off. Just for the most part, it's looking like a return to form, which is fantastic. I'm really really excited for it. This is definitely not on my bingo card for 2024. That's for sure. It's just I'm stoked, man. I'm genuinely very very excited, and
I'm
I'm
excited to
ready.
get back into it. I
Yeah.
played Breaker 3 on Vita, like, oh my god, that
Nice.
was 8 years ago.
Oh boy.
Um,
Yeah.
and I tried to play New Gundam Breaker, but again, the game sucks. So I just, again, thought the series was dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just looked into it. New Gundam Breaker was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
And then right after that was Gundam Breaker Mobile. The interesting thing is like in the interview they had with Famitsu, I believe, they said the development on Gundam Breaker 4 started in 2019. Which is
wow.
wow, wild. I
Uh,
think the one thing that's like the most interesting thing about this is they haven't officially announced this game for crossplay. I don't know if it will have it, but part of like the live stream footage for this game was like there's a profile card and there's like a friend code at the very bottom of that profile card. And you usually don't put friend codes in a multi-platform title these days unless you're doing crossplay. So they haven't said anything. I hope it is true, but who knows? I don't know. But that'd be amazing if they allow for.
I'm stoked because I'm now in my Gundam era where I'm a huge mecha fan, whereas I was just kind of back in like 2016. So I am so primed to enjoy this.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, once I leave this call, I'm just gonna go to the hobby store and go buy a Gunpla.
Hey, should, tell us what you end up buying. I'd love
Uh,
to.
so my store has that some of those new like Seed Freedom high grades, and I don't know
Yeah.
anything about Seed besides the fact that it sucks, but those high grades look really nice. I don't know if you know, but like the collector's edition of Gundam Breaker 3 has a Gunpla in it, and I got really excited. But then they revealed that it was an entry grade, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm good.
Oh yeah, they usually do that. Yeah, like I think they did that for Gundam Breaker 3, then also Gundam Breaker 4. They're gonna do it with like a gun barrel Gundam thing, which is, I mean, if, I know this will sound weird, but like I don't build Gunpla as a hobby. I love doing it in Gundam Breaker, but I don't actually do it in real life. People are like, what are you doing? You're so prideful. I'm like, I know, but I feel like I'm gonna fuck it up. I don't have steady hands. I feel like I'm gonna ruin everything. But I respect people who do it. I love seeing people do it.
My
I appreciate.
backlog is ridiculous. I haven't had as much time to build like
Mhm.
model kits lately, but like I'm a massive model kit fan.
That's awesome.
So like it's really fun to be like, oh, Gundam game, that's cool. And I like know people of like certain interests, like because I have hobby friends
Mhm.
and I have Monster Hunter friends, and I'm like, hey,
Right.
what if you played Gunpla Monster Hunter? And they go, oh, wait, no, that sounds rad. I want to play that. I'm like, yeah, you do.
I have a friend who's a big Monster Hunter fan. Also, like loves building Gunpla. Like he'll get expensive Monster Hunter statues, and also like, and then the next day he's like building a Kshatriya, which
Yeah.
is fucking awesome. So it's great. I mean, I hope this is as good as 3, and ideally even better. There's no release date, but it's coming out on fucking
This year?
everything. Yep, this year, and on like pretty much every platform. I think. I think it's every platform. I'm not sure.
More or less.
Not Xbox.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
That makes
everything but
sense.
Xbox.
It
And
it is coming to Switch, and I'm very happy now. I'm more of a PC gamer because I won't even think about getting that game on Switch. Hopefully, it runs good on Steam Deck.
yeah, hopefully just the
Yeah, hopefully.
stick for that, and just it'll be a game changer because this game will have an unlocked frame rate, I imagine, on PC, or at least a very high frame rate. And like one of my main gripes to Gundam Breaker 3 is like that game has a 30 FPS cap, often dips. It has like insane motion blur, which is annoying. And I won't have to worry about that with this game. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it shakes up. Hopefully, I think my ideal release timing for this would be like around May, because right now May looks vacant for new releases. Fingers crossed.
That is true, but I imagine in May, a lot of people will still be playing Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Is that April
Dragon's
or
Dogma,
is that
no, Dragon's
March?
Dogma 2 is March
Oh,
22. So
it's coming out in April then.
so May will be like people will be for
Saga.
the few of us, yeah, Saga.
Oh, yeah, true, yeah. That'll be me. May can stay vacant.
Euden is April as well. I think there's like one or two other April, like late April releases. Stellar Blade,
Sandland.
Sandland.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
Aiden Chronicle, Saga, Emerald Beyond, Sandland, and Stellar Blade all released in like the same week.
Yeah. Ugh. Ugh.
I was talking to some friends about this. It's like I feel like this year, if you're primarily into AAA games, there's basically nothing for you, at least like as of now. But if you're into like AA Japanese games, oh my god, you're eating good every month for at least like half of the year so far. We don't even know what's happening in like the later half.
To me, I'm just like, it's only February, but I'm like, it's already like shaping up to be one of my favorite games, like years in gaming ever. Like
I'm
there's like new
overwhelmed.
releases, so I'm just like, fuck, man. There's too many like interesting releases that like in my field to like speak to me. And I'm like, how am I ever gonna keep up?
So I think for the rest of the announcements on the Nintendo Direct, realizing that we're over 2 hours into this podcast, we'll just kind of give these a little bit of a headline rundown, maybe give up to 5 minutes on each if there's something to discuss. Not that any of these aren't like surprising. Like for instance, this next one I don't think is something we expected. Monster Hunter Stories, which was originally, I hope I get this right, a 3DS game that was later ported to mobile, is now getting the full remaster treatment and is going to be on PC, PS4, and Switch as well. So
this is actually a bigger deal than just a simple remaster, but I'll go into that in a sec.
Yeah, I was gonna say it actually did come to one console, and it's James' favorite console.
No, we're not doing this.
We're not doing this. This came out on Apple TV.
Apple Arcade, but yeah.
I totally forgot it got an Apple Arcade release.
Also, Colin, you're wrong. It didn't come to Apple TV because it was on Apple Arcade, but it didn't have gamepad support, so you could not play it on an Apple TV.
I could have sworn you could have played this on Apple TV.
Nope.
Oh well, you're the expert.
Just tap your TV. Easy.
But I'm excited. I really liked Stories 2.
So the big thing about this is that when Stories 1 came out in the West, there were 3 post-launch updates that Japan got. And the Western version was based off of the game after the first update came out. We did not receive the other 2 updates. And the stuff that those other 2 updates added were pretty substantial. Like, you got 2 additional, like, endgame tower dungeons, like 50 floors, one of which was the ability to redo any of the fights in the story at a higher difficulty. The other was fights against some of the characters from the anime. You also got double the amount of monster storage. You got the ability to completely redo your character at any time as long as you return to your house. And there was also like a bunch of monsters that were either not in the Western version, like Kushalade or Etiastra, and I believe Rajang weren't available, but they were in Japan. And then there were other monsters that were available, but only if you downloaded DLC. And now the updates made it so that you could actually more easily access those monsters and add them to your team. So it was like a pretty substantial amount of content. Like, it's surprising that they didn't make a bigger deal about this in the announcement, but I also understand why, because when Monster Hunter Stories came out, Monster Hunter was a way more niche franchise in the West, for one thing, but also the second thing, it was a 3DS game that released after the Switch came out, so most people didn't play the original version, so it's not really that much of a selling point if everything's new to you anyways. But still, interesting stuff.
So I think the challenge of this title is like, people already have, like, I assume a lot of people who played Monster Stories like usually like played Monster Stories 2 or Wings of Ruin or whatever, and like, is that game like just is if
it's
you're going
better.
For, like, a gameplay
it's just better.
yeah,
it's just better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that'll be like the challenge for this like re-release is like, you know, some people
One thing
are used to.
One thing that Monster Hunter Stories has that's kind of interesting, and it's kind of still there in Stories too, but it seems like they kind of scrubbed most of it like last minute. So there's one thing you can do in Stories where with the gene system, you can actually give monsters different elemental properties. And like the way they introduced it in Stories 1 is that you give a Lugambi fire powers, which is absolutely insane. The way it worked in Stories 1 is that based off of the elemental properties that you give to a monster, you're basically making your own subspecies because it changes the color palette of the monster to match the element you gave it.
Okay.
And that wasn't in Stories 2, even though you could do the same thing with giving them additional like elemental properties.
Stories 1 does have one very important thing that Stories 2 does not. A very important thing. Crucially important.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah.
I don't believe you.
We've talked about this before. It has Poogies.
Oh, that's right.
Wait, Poogies are not in Stories 2?
No. They're collectibles in 1, but they're not in 2.
Really? I didn't even realize that Poogie wasn't in Stories 2. Huh.
Now you're
making so now that's the reason they should market it. That's what they should write on for this game's marketing. It's like, look,
Monster Hunter Stories 1 featuring Poogie.
Exactly. We fucked up with 2, but we're aiming to rectify it in this re-release.
And I forget if I said, but that is slated for summer 2024. We don't have a specific release date yet, just the window. Here's one that I know Adam and Chow at the least, and potentially others are interested in. A follow-up to Ender Lily's Quietus of the Nights. We have the announcement of Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. So basically it takes place in like the same canon as the original game and has a very like pretty trailer to go along with it.
It looks very neat. I'm excited to play it. The funny thing about the announcement is that they have officially only announced it for Switch, but if you go to the website, it has like the copyright notices for PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. So it's coming.
Go for it. Finish your thought.
So it's like they haven't announced it yet, but it's coming to everything. It's coming to everything.
Before we go on with this news story, I understand Cullen has to leave.
Yes, unfortunately, I have to run out, but this was great. I will try my best to be here next week, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it because I'll definitely have a lot to say about Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for having me.
It was nice having you on, dude.
Yeah, anytime. I will try to be there more often. But yeah, take care, everybody.
Take care, dude.
Thanks, Colin.
All right, bye.
And to wrap up for that, just 2024 is the slated release date for Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like James was saying, this if you go to their site, there's like a timer countdown again for next info drop, along with trademark notices for other platforms. Even though it's only announced for Switch for now, and it makes me wonder: is the timer countdown to reveal it for other platforms? I don't know. Who knows?
And it's like it would be one thing if it was just like it's like looking at the page. There's literally only the logo, the countdown, and then the copyright notices. So it's like it's very conspicuous. Like it's impossible not to notice. It's like, oh, I guess this is coming to Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation.
And according to Adam, this does not exist yet until it comes to PC, right, Adam?
That's his usual mindset.
Yeah, so
I agree.
So I
I'm
reviewed Ender Lilies. I liked it a lot. It's a very Valkyrie profile, which is why I liked it. Yeah, I was excited for this one, and then I saw that it was only announced for Switch, and I was sort of like, well, never mind. I'll wait.
But yeah, I mean, I started Ender Lilies, but like I got an assignment probably, and I had to like drop it for a bit. So I'll probably restart that game because I wasn't too far in. But I am interested in playing through it, hopefully before Ender Magnolia. It was pretty much a cult classic. Like people who played it really liked it. I believe it was like pretty rated highly when it came out. So
didn't at least some of the developers, or was it the publisher or something? I know that like some of the people that worked on Ender Lilies also worked on Harvestella, right?
Yeah, they had two different developers. They had AdGlobe and then they had Livewire, and one went to make Harvestella, and the other went to make Redemption Reapers, which I reviewed. So they kind of had two different developers. I'm not sure if we know who's developing this. I think it's AdGlobe.
The press release mentioned both AdGlobe and Livewire.
Oh, really? Maybe they're teaming up again, I guess.
Yeah. So we'll see.
And then there's always one of these on the Japanese Nintendo Direct. There was a exclusive announcement, if you want to say that, think of it that way, for a new FuRyu RPG. In the Japanese Nintendo Direct, announced to release this summer. We had the announcement of Reynatis, which will release in Japan for Nintendo Switch and then also PlayStation platforms on July 25th. It's an action RPG featuring two parallel protagonists. And I've seen some people compare like the general art and vibe of this game to that Verum Rex. And this is not a Square Enix game, but I've seen people
even though
compare
Nojima's working
the
on it.
vibe. Well, there you go.
This game is first of all, if you go to the official website on this one, it's developed by Natsume Atari, who is sort of interesting because they don't typically do games like this. They did the Aiden Rising, companion game that came out a couple years ago for the Aiden series, and they also did they're also doing the Penny Blood companion game coming out. But there's some key staff on this game that are like Square Enix veterans. There's Kazushige Nojima, who's done a lot of Square Enix writing on Final Fantasy stuff. Yoko Shimomura, who's not a Square Enix employee but has done a lot of Square Enix stuff, of course. And then Yusuke Naora, who's done a bunch of like Square Enix art, and he apparently did the key art. So that's why it might look like a Square Enix game, because it's got the artist who's worked on Final Fantasy stuff in the past. He didn't do the character design though. That was someone else whose name I don't have in front of me. But a lot of people, I've seen people compare this and like, this looks like Versus 13 or Verum Rex or whatever, and it's like, I don't know. See what you want to see.
I'm very, once again, there's the FuRyu classic where
Yeah.
upon a new FuRyu published game, it's like the first things they'll tell you, it's like this is from very recognizable names in this space. But like for example, Monarch, it's like, oh, this is from like the Megami Tensei,
Original Persona, yeah.
the original Megami Tensei people, and it's like, well, that didn't pan out. And the Caligula effect, had like recognizable names, and that didn't really pan out. And
I
there's, like,
mean,
some other...
people like Caligula Effect overdosing too. Like generally, like I do know people that do really like those games.
This isn't here or there, but I know someone who tried Overdose like last week and hated it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Here's the other thing. Didn't you, Adam? Didn't you generally like Cry Machina? And that was a FuRyu game.
Yeah, but oddly enough, that was one of the ones where they didn't like advertise a big name.
Yeah.
And but I liked it enough. Like I gave it a 7. Like I liked it.
Yeah.
Enough.
It's like one of those things that's like, well, we'll see how it pans out, because it's easy to like get excited now because you see big news, like they've done this 4 other times,
Yep.
So it's just, FuRyu has a track record. It's a pattern. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fully expect like NIS America is who I would guess would release this, or Exceed Marvelous, one of those two.
Yeah.
Because last year,
also it seemed.
All I was gonna say is last year Marvelous released one FuRyu game, which was Trinity Trigger, and NIS America did the other one, which was Cry Machina.
Oh yeah, Trinity Trigger. Once again, another project that had recognizable names that was announced.
Yeah, and I did not like that one.
Yeah, I will say that this seems to be like a similar situation maybe to like what we were just talking about with Ender Magnolia, where it's like it's announced for PlayStation and Switch, but there's a copyright notice for Steam on the website. And if you actually link the website, the like what do you call it? Is it like the robots text?
The metadata will mention
the metadata
Steam.
says it's coming to Steam, so it's like I'm guessing they're just waiting until like a localization announcement or something, but probably coming to PC.
Are you gonna check this out, Adam?
Probably.
Does you love Cry Machina?
It looks neat, and I'd like to check it out. It's very funny how like obviously folks are saying, "Oh, this is like Verum Rex," when Nomura has outright said that he intends to make a Verum Rex game eventually. So.
Yeah, I mean, we got some gameplay footage as well from the announcement. It's like it seems to be an action RPG, and it has very urban street life environmental design with like a lot of neon.
I see you as an Organization 13 member.
Yeah. Might as well be.
The last major announcement of the week that wasn't part of the Nintendo Direct, but people had kind of been predicting for a while because of like YouTube upload metadata stuff, is that we finally got a trailer and a release date for the long-awaited Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. We got a trailer for it, and it'll be releasing on June 21st, and it will feature a place called the Land of Shadow, which is described as obscured by the Erdtree, and we will finally meet Michaela, which is the brother of Millennia of Elden Ring infamy. And then, of course, the trailer shows a lot of environments and beasts and boss fights and all the usual thing you would expect for this sort of trailer.
So there's interesting things like going on with this expansion compared to other past From Software DLC things. So one, this is substantially more expensive than past DLC. It's like $40, I believe, and it even has like physical release, or at least like they're selling physical stuff for this DLC as well, which is interesting. In the trailer, you've seen like the new area, the Land of Shadow. In previews they said it's about as big as Limgrave, so who knows how big it'll be. Like Limgrave is pretty substantial. We see some new weapons. We see like kind of like a blade and shield sort of thing, and then like a reverse grip like dual style, and then they have like some martial art like a martial art move set as well in that trailer, and then there's like a dedicated like throwing projectile, like throwing knife um weapon type category, because they said are adding like 8 new weapon categories, I believe, which is a lot. That's quite a bit. The most interesting part about this game, this expansion, that's a big change from past DLC, uh, Souls DLCs, is I'm trying to explain this like in the way that they said it. There's like a new power, like not power requirement, like a power system that's only in the DLC area, where you progress your power level similar to Sekiro. So how it was in Sekiro is you beat this like specific bosses to obtain their memories, and you use these memories to power up your attack power in that game. So they're trying to solve this problem that's happened in almost every Souls DLC, from where you have like your completed character go start the DLC, and you're just gonna like pretty much stomp everything because you have this completed character
Or
in the
the
build.
opposite, where it's like, oh, maybe you're on New Game Plus 7 now,
Yeah.
and so the DLC is gonna kick your fucking ass. So
Yeah, true. So they're trying to set like this new like power standard in this land of shadow. Who knows exactly how it's gonna like manifest, but they're comparing it to Sekiro, so you kind of have like a somewhat decent framework, like what where they're gonna take this, which is interesting. They mentioned at least 10 new bosses, and interestingly enough, like the story for this DLC isn't like it wasn't like penned by George R. R. Martin. It's like they're building off of the mythos that he like provided for the base game, but it's not like this wasn't like directly penned by him, unlike the base game. Um and yeah, it's pretty interesting what where they're taking this expansion.
I'm
And like
totally
you
gonna load up my character and be like, I have no idea how to play this game. I have no
I,
idea what I was good at. I have no
I
idea where I've been.
exactly, yeah. I'm thinking like I was like maybe I'll start like do a new Elden save like in May, and maybe start like working on a character so I can be ready for this.
In
Um,
the empty month of May.
yeah, the empty bottle until otherwise stated. Um, I I believe I'm trying to remember if there was like if they mentioned like how you access DLC, but it's gonna be at least beating Mog and Rodan, I believe, because the one of the locations in the trailer where you can clearly like know where it is like the Mogworm Palace. Um, so we'll see. I
makes
believe it's around
sense.
there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure pretty much everyone assumed as soon as they got to that like section after beating Mog, it's like, oh, so this is where the DLC is going to start. Because
Exactly.
it's like, yeah.
Mhm. So it's it's gonna be out the same day as SNT5 Vengeance. So not good. Already once again not good on having multiple big releases on the same day.
It can't keep fucking happening this year. It's like it's happening with Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin. It's not quite the same thing, but Stellar Blade, Saga Emerald Beyond, and Eiyuden Chronicles come out within 3 days of each other. Nightmare.
There's on top of like on top of like the previous like Infinite Wealth, Persona 3 Reload, and
Relink, yeah.
Relink. Yeah,
Publishers are not allowed to
Cheering
release anything in
the
May.
Wanderer and Final Fantasy
yeah,
VII
that's true.
Rebirth on within 2 days of each other.
Yeah, not good, not good. So yeah, May, like Adam said, nothing gets released in May at all. Period.
Okay, give us time to catch
May
up.
is our backlog month. Just let it be. Just let it be.
May is the month that Adam needs to play all 5 saga routes for like 500 hours and be a
True.
completionist.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. I am actually genuinely worried that like Eiyuden is gonna be like a massive, massive game. So it's like between that and Saga, it's like, oh man, we'll even be fully finished with those games by the time that SMT5 and the Elden Ring DLC hits. I don't know. I don't know.
I watched that like recent Saga Emerald Beyond like stream that actually showed off like the combat in action, like live action, and it's like, fuck, man, this game looks insane.
Yeah.
We have a few smaller updates to round out the middle part of the podcast here. I say middle, back third. So basically, these are like upcoming added gameplay trailers or behind the scenes looks at some upcoming games. We got two updates for Rise of the Ronin, the aforementioned Rise of the Ronin. So we have our second entry and their behind the scenes series. They had one last week or the week before where they just talked about the era the game is set in, the story premise, and the history. This one they did a behind the scenes on like the armaments, the weaponry, the fighting styles, and basically talking kind of about the merging of kind of like the classic samurai bushido versus the the appearance of bayonets and handguns and artillery and things like that, and a little bit about the hang glider and a few things. And they talk about how they designed the combat system with some realism in mind. They wanted to make sure that these were feats that could actually be accomplished. There's no fantasy elements or very, 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 very light fantasy elements. So it's about a 10-minute kind of a little micro documentary, which is kind of fun to watch.
Realistic, just like firing off projectiles from a hang glider,
Well,
just,
yeah, the
real
combat
realistic.
designer the combat designer talks about like these are things that could be actually be accomplished, and this guy is like flinging himself 6 feet in the air.
Yeah,
It's like it's
I
I see
agree
what
with
they're
you.
trying to ground it a little bit, but with understanding that this is a video game.
So
The
one,
other video,
there's collectible cats in this game. That's like
I
a shadow
hope.
of that world vignette thing. I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah, so the other one was a vignette series. So this is another like separate series of videos. So the behind the scenes series, which we've got two entries, and this one they're calling the vignette series. So the first one is called the World Vignette. And it's basically I kind of like the idea of this. There's no voiceover, no in-game dialogue, I don't think. And it's only just pure gameplay, pure panovers of the environments, things like that. There's a lot of the hang glider because of course it gives you a nice viewpoint. And yes, a lot of collectible cats. I hope they do like a Neo um thing and they put a Scampus in there somewhere. I want to see a Scampus.
Oh, that'd be good.
So, just hidden away. But yeah, the world vignette seems like something that would be on like for us boomers, G4 like Cinematech. So there's just like a random cutscene that
Yeah,
they'd roll into.
yeah.
It's kind of fun.
The behind the scenes, focusing on like the fight, the combat system. It's like this is like kind of the first time they've actually like shown off like, hey, there's actually party members in this game that you can
Oh
like
yeah,
take
I should
with
have touched
you
on that more. Go
on
ahead.
stages. So like there'll be like historical figures like Ryoma Sakamoto that like you can like form a bond with, and like you can like actually have them like assist you in like missions, which is I thought like since this was an open world action RPG, I was like I thought there'd be like no stages, but apparently there's like mission stages too in this game, and like it's interesting because you have these different on top of like the weapons that you collect, each of them has like a school or practice like combat style that can be upgraded, and you do this as by like enhancing the bond level with like different allies. So if you want to make a certain weapon stronger, their combat style, you have to engage with the system to like build up bonds with them. And like even in the middle of combat when they assist you, like you can actually swap control over to them so you're playing them too, which is
That was the
that's
part that took me by surprise because
yeah.
it's like, yeah, Wo Long had an ally system, kind of rudimentary in comparison, but yeah, there was at a basic level, a bond level. They give you their gear if you bonded high enough with them. So you could kind of see like, oh, they extrapolated from that to make the party system in Rise of the Ronin. It's like, well, yes, but also you can play as them. Like you can literally just switch mid fight. Kind of it almost the way they show it. It's hard to see based on the way they cut the trailer. But it almost looks like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
Yeah,
remake style, where like
yeah.
mid combat, you're like, I'm gonna change to this character now and use their weapon style, and like, oh, that's that was when I was watching the trailer, it's like that's I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so there's there's a lot of like interesting like just like things they kind of throw out. It's like, wait, you can do that throughout these series.
But, like,
So
yeah, a lot of these Souls like games, even in Team Ninja, have had followers. This is nothing new, and they're like, just watch, just this is new. Like, oh, okay.
mm. Yeah, this is these have been really cool like behind the scenes like things coming out for Rise of the Ronin. Just kind of interesting like their marketing style for this game where it's like it's more subtle, it's more subdued compared to like other
Mhm.
marketing. Uh stuff for other games.
Yeah, because they're two trailer series now. One is kind of this low, really chill, just vibe video vignette, and then the other ones are kind of like these micro documentaries. So not bombastic, not flashy, just really chill.
Hmm.
We also got kind of similar to the 10-minute Rise of the Ronin one, kind of. We've got a similar gameplay extended overview for the upcoming Sandland that we brought up earlier. So yeah, about a 10-minute video, and this one is kind of like voiced over by voice of God, voice in the sky about how all the game system works for Sandland. And Sandland has had a ton of trailers, even on the news post for this. Adam kind of, or was it Adam? Let's see.
I
No, it
did
was
it.
Josh in this one. Yeah, you bulleted out all of the other things they've covered, and like story trailer, gameplay footage, announcement trailer, hands-on impressions. So there's been a lot of video footage for this game, but I watched this one front to finish, and this one's like a nice container that just kind of
This is
touches
the
on.
best like this is the best like video they've released for this game in terms of like what is the game, what do you do in this game, what can I do in this game.
Mhm.
And it gives a nice succinct summary of that. And I think the on foot combat is like take it or leave it. I don't think that's like really the appeal of the game. I think the strongest thing that this game has is going for it is like that vehicle combat where you have like these different vehicles that you can summon at will through these capsules, and like there's like extensive customization on like them on like from aesthetic preference on like paint jobs, but also like in terms of like what weaponry and arsenal you'll equip them with for certain situations. And I think that's kind of I'm hoping this game is like really really cool, because I think there's a lot of like, neat ideas in play that like definitely is reminiscent of like Metal Max type of stuff.
Mhm. There's two things in the trailer I want to highlight. First of all, there's a town that you can build up, and I'm always a sucker for that. Like, oh crap, do I have to play this? Like, here's a town. It starts as a dump, but this is what it can become if you put, your blood, sweat, and tears into it. I'm like, oh shit, I hate this stuff. I mean, I hate it because I love this stuff. That means I gotta play it. But also, you talk about all the mech customizations, and it's like your capsules can only hold 5, so you got to be choosy about what you pick. I'm like, wait, how many are there? So the
Yeah,
way that they haven't said explicitly, but it seems like there's not only can each mech be like tailored to what armaments you want, but like it seems like there's just like a huge slew. We don't know the total, I don't think, about what you can pick from because you can only bring 5 with you at any given time.
I'm also glad that they just showed off like another environment besides like the desert. I understand that the core story is desert focused, but like I just need a little bit of environmental variety in the colors. And like, oh, okay, there's like a
Mm.
green zone
Yeah,
you
like a
can go
green
here
like
that there's
cave
grass.
area.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks really fun. It looks like it's in a crowded time, as we keep harping. But this, if I were to play like a game that's out of my like comfort or familiarity zone, because I don't know anything about this IP, this would probably be the one to be like, you know what, I'll give this one a try. We got a similar, though much shorter gameplay trailer for Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, which whenever I see this title, I'm like, wait, yeah, that's right. Not only has Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn not come out yet, but it still doesn't really have a date. Slated for this year at the moment, no specific window. We got a new gameplay footage called Wanderer's Rest. This trailer, I'll just be honest, I thought it was okay. It's pretty short. I like that it's uninterrupted gameplay. It's not cut too much, but it's mostly just like a single minor boss fight, and the gameplay I don't think shows that well. It's a little bit slower. It's behind the shoulder.
You can tell
Traditional.
it's definitely its core inspiration was like the new God of War series in terms of
Hmm.
the perspective and like how the gameplay flow goes. Like it's cool that you got a gun, to mix it up. But
It shows a
it's
little bit of traversal where like you use your little familiar. I'm not sure what it is. It's like a cat lemur thing. And like you can use that to help like get up to higher ledges. There's a little bit of platforming, but most of this footage is a boss fight. Is not. I mean, it's not great. It's not terrible. It's just kind of fine. The boss has like a club, and you shoot it, and you dodge it when it swings. So I still think this game could be interesting, and I know Adam's kind of interested in it, but I think this trailer's just kind of an look at it.
Adam, are you gonna review this when it gets a date?
I'm obligated to review all the Euro jank.
Oh, okay.
He's like, yes, I will. It's my job.
I Adam's like, I am Euro Jake's strongest champion.
That's also
Yeah, and the
somewhat of a
thing is,
joke. That's also something of a joke because this is actually from New Zealand. So
Oh, damn, he got us.
that's Southern Hemisphere Europe.
more or less.
And I guess, like, I hate to look at a trailer and just tell everyone, it's meh, but I just watched the Rise of the Ronin gameplay, which looked neat, and then the Sandland gameplay, which looked neat, and then this one just kind of in comparison, I was like, I'm not feeling as much. And then the last gameplay trailer that we got for an upcoming game. Oh no, I closed my uh my document. The Ex Astris premium mobile game releasing in a couple weeks from the same
Actually
developers
releases in a couple
as
days.
a couple
Yeah.
days. Yeah, you're right. It's February 27th. So we're 3 days at the time of recording. So yeah, Ex Astris. This is from the same developers as Arknights. Arknights? I always forget if the K is pronounced both ways.
Right.
So, and then this is a kind of a classic premium mobile game, and like it will have a single price, which I don't know if it's been detailed. Is it
$10, I
$10?
believe. Yeah, it's $10. It's
Yeah,
not a gotcha game.
yeah, not gotcha. As far as I can tell, let me check. Let me check the Apple page. They're not advertising mobile
No, I think the Google
in-game
Play page
purchase.
does say in-app purchases, or at least it used to.
Yeah,
Let's
I
see.
don't know if that was an
mentioned this.
error.
The Apple page doesn't say anything clear, but based on the footage and based on the way they're marketing it, they're saying this is a premium $10 like Chaos Rings sort of title where it just happens to be played on a mobile phone. And basically we got a gameplay introduction trailer and a world building trailer for this, just to kind of show like how the battle system works. Yeah, okay, Adam does show that it does have in-app purchases of some fashion, but we
You don't
know what that
exactly
means.
Well,
know.
it
Like,
could
you
just be
don't.
boilerplate, and they're just assuming, and then it may not. Who knows? Store
Yeah,
pages can be
Yeah,
it
wrong.
might be an error. Yeah, I mean, we
we
don't.
don't trust Google, and we don't
I,
trust Google anymore.
I plan on actually checking this game out. I don't know if it's not going to be on release, but I'm definitely interested because like you don't see this type of game like from typical like people who release free to play gotcha games. So I'm really just to see like why they decided to go this route and to see if there's a good game, in it. I think the gameplay introduction trailer is like it's pretty interesting because it reminds me a lot of like Final Fantasy 13, oddly enough, in terms of like enemy state where like you can like launch enemies into the air and like keep them in the air. They have like break states for rewarding you for keeping them in the air. Same thing for like for downing them. And there's like a whole robust like system of how like you manipulate the combo of your moves.
Yeah,
Like
as
which
for the trailers
moves you
themselves,
know.
there's actually 2 trailers released this week.
Yeah.
One of them, which they call like the world building PV, that one is basically like it's framed as like this is your mission briefing because you're like an agent of some place and this is the planet you're going to and this is the problem. So that's how it's framed for the world building
That's the
trailer.
same way they
That's
frame their
they've
other
done.
game too.
Yeah. But then the gameplay introduction trailer that Josh was just talking about, it's kind of like a long video tutorial. Like it's literally like here's the combat screen. Here are where your icons are, and none of it is voiced. It's like literally just pointing out like here's where the character icons are. If you click this, you can check their stats. To do skills, you go over here. You can check the status of the enemy, and then it'll like go out of battle. And, like on the world, you can explore and find these things, and then later on, here's what the skill tree looks like. It's kind of just like literally going over like all the different components and mechanics of the games, like a
And the
tutorial
backing
would.
soundtrack's kind of like nice and just like
Mhm.
a vibe. I don't know, it's relaxing to watch. I don't know.
There's like a Tetris component to like these upgrade systems. Where there's like oddly shaped like molds, and then like you fit pieces into them the best that you can. All right,
It reminds me of something in another game, but I can't bring it to mind, where not only is your inventory, in this case, it's a skill screen, like a unique shape, but the items, your skills you're putting into it are unique shapes as well. So that's how, and so you have to fit them in there in a way that maximizes your whatever you want your build to be, and also do you literally have like the quote unquote space to put it. So that's kind of
Our prize
interesting.
Fantasia for the Wii that had a
Uh,
Tetris system.
Oh, did it? I played that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah,
remember.
yeah. That's what I remember from it. It's like the I remember two things from it: the Tetris thing and the Vax story like plot twist in it.
my only thing that I know about Archives Fantasia is the like masterclass like English dialogue
Oh
YouTube
yeah,
meme video.
oh yeah.
That's like the English voice acting just put in a vacuum and just be like, here's what you get. That covers it for gameplay overview for upcoming games. For sales, we have a couple big ones here. We have that NieR Automata has, I think it's on its 7th anniversary right around now, and it has sold 8 million units worldwide, and that's about a half million more than a little under a year ago. So NieR Automata just selling a cool 500,000 or so in the last 10 or so months. It just keeps trucking along.
Yeah, it's man, who could have fucking seen this?
Yeah,
8
so like
million?
imagine saying to someone in like 2013 or 2014, the sequel to NieR is going to sell more than the Final Fantasy VII remake, because the remake, as far as we know, is at 7 million. Now I know it'll probably go up, people buying, double dipping or whatever as they're excited for sequels, but still, like 8 million
The
is kind
fact
of
that's even in
crazy.
the same like order of
Yeah.
magnitude.
If you
And
had told me back in when was NieR Automata first announced? It was 2015. Yeah, it was 2015. If you had told me in May of 2015 that not only was the original NieR going to get a sequel, but was going to end up selling more than the first portion of the remake of Final Fantasy
Yeah,
VII, I would have laughed in your
Yeah.
face.
right, I actually just said that. Must have missed it, but just like that was such a success for Square Enix. I feel like for several years afterwards, they were trying to like replicate it they were releasing so many like mid-budget games from various franchises, trying to basically replicate, like, can we get like a hit, from a game that's not a AAA game, that's not
Should have been
doesn't have like
Harvestella.
doesn't have like a gigantic development cost or whatever. Can we get a hit? And they had like some modest successes. I think Octopath,
They're
the
just
first
like, we
one
just
was
need
3
one of these to
million.
hit, and then none of them hit.
Octopath, the first one was like 3 million. I think Trials of Mana hit like 1 million, the remake. But yeah, NieR Automata is on its own, tier here. So
They also
Yeah.
produced. They also inadvertently produced the Queen of RPGs that showed up in like virtually almost every fucking mobile game, and other like big budget like Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising.
Yeah, that's the most recent
And-
one, right? She just got
Yeah,
added to Grand Blue Fantasy
yeah,
Versus.
but even showed up in shit like Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah.
It's like okay.
Yeah,
So,
Soul Calibur 6-2, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just they created like honestly like probably one of the most modern iconic characters in terms of like just how much you see this character now.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I will say though that I do think that, kind of unrelated, it does seem like we're eventually going to get like a NieR 3. Like stuff at the recent concerts has just been like teasing that it's like, okay, there's more to the story eventually. So hopefully that means that with how successful NieR Automata was, maybe within the next couple years.
I
maybe.
kind of hope they just kind of or like it like the next whatever the next mainline NieR is as it's like totally fucking different like how from how original NieR was to Automata, which was totally different. I just kind of hope they don't continue the 2B and 9S story and kind of just once again just do something completely different. That's what
I also hope that they don't continue the 2B and 9S story, but I will also say that whatever a NieR 3 ends up being, I would not bet on 2B and 9S not appearing in some form.
I mean, they kind of almost did Replicant in some way, shape, or form. So
yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. Where it's like, if they released a NieR 3 and had like only the most tenuous of connections to the other two, like very like almost like you blink and you miss it, I'd be okay with that. But I'm pretty sure they're going to make it a little bit more than just that.
I mean, it
But
just
maybe they'll
makes
show some
sense.
machine.
Like,
Yeah.
like if I was tired to like fuck you, I'm making Drakengard 4. That's it. Like okay.
Also for sales updates, we got an update that Tales of Arise has sold 3 million copies. And Adam, you did a little bit, or was it Adam or Josh? Adam on this one. You looked at a few other sales updates for the series,
Well-
and you think Tales of Arise might be the best selling in the series now?
So a
It's
couple
hard
of
to
years
say.
ago, during like a big, I forget if it was like just like a franchise like anniversary, celebration thing, they actually had like a list of sales for the entire series. And this was in September 2021. So yeah, the official Japanese Twitter account a couple of years ago gave away like the best-selling games in the series, and it was Tales of Vesperia at 2.88 million, and that was combining like its Xbox release, its PlayStation 3 release, and its remaster. So like that was a few years ago. Now Tales of Arise is at 3 million. It's like, well, Vesperia could maybe also be at 3 million if it sold maybe 100,000 in the last couple of years. So in either case, Arise is either number 1 or number 2. I think Symphonia is also really high at around like 2.4 million, and it's like, how much did the remaster sell? It could be also around 3 million. I kind of doubt it, but in any case, I think it's safe to say that Arise, Vesperia, and Symphonia are the best-selling Tales games. Vesperia and Symphonia kind of cheating because they've had like multiple releases, but still, they're all roughly in that 2 to 3 million range. So
So
yeah.
obviously, Tales of Arise was kind of like a paradigm shift for Tales Studio because it was like, they put a lot more time into it. It wasn't an annual release as the series had been like for the decade prior. So I do wonder like what their sales expectations were. I mean, to say it's the best selling game or damn close to it in the series has got to be somewhat of a success. But I just don't know like what their expectations were with the way they kind of shuffled their focus around. But still, good to see it at 3 million. And the last update that we have is Owlcat Games has announced that Warhammer Rogue Trader, which released last December, has hit the 500,000 sales, the 500,000 mark. And this is in addition to their major like 1.1 update that came out over the last week that fixed, a billion things supposedly.
Yeah, this PC Gamer article said apparently the update to Rogue Trader made over 1,800 bug fixes or changes to the game. So like, that's why we haven't reviewed it yet.
No, but
Christ.
yeah, so yeah, I am on track to review this. I have a review copy that I've not made a lot of progress in. I'll just be honest. But once I'm done with like now that version 1.1 has seemingly like really cleaned up a lot. Hopefully, like in the long run, this will give me a more valid shake at the game because
And
having had played the other two games as they launched with the issues that they had, I was like, you know what?
I mean, you've said
I'll let
this
this one go.
before, but for people listening to the podcast for the first time, like you could not even finish Kingmaker because it was so buggy. So that's your
Yeah.
excuse, if you will. Like, I'm gonna wait. I
Mhm.
don't, you don't want to play them.
But yeah, 500,000 copies for a CRPG turn-based is pretty damn incredible.
And also the year that like when Baldur's Gate 3 came out too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think people are coming around now. Like they got into CRPG with Baldur's Gate 3. Like I'm gonna go check out other ones. I'm sure that's like some sort of trickle effect in some aspect for some of them.
And also, I don't know how much weight the Warhammer IP is bowling because I know it's super
Right.
popular in certain circles. I don't know if that overlaps. To what extent does that overlap with the PC gaming circle? I assume pretty significantly, but I just don't know because I'm not in that sphere. But hopefully, it seems like it's pretty well regarded. So hopefully, they're getting a real cool game in their Warhammer IP because I know Warhammer IP in terms of video games has not always created the best the best work. But this one seems like it's. I'm excited to get to this one, but I guess I'll reserve judgment until I experience for myself. Maybe this will be my May game. Going into dates. Obviously the Unicorn Overlord demo is out now. Also out now that was announced on the Nintendo Direct is Pentiment. So obviously over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about Xbox moving 4 of their titles, Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, and Sea of Thieves to other platforms, including Switch and PlayStation. And Pentiment is now available on Nintendo and PlayStation consoles.
To be clear, not
I know
all of
Adam
those
and I
games are announced for Switch. I think like Hi-Fi Rush, they specifically did not announce for Switch.
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
rumor is that they tried to get it running at 60 FPS, and which obviously would be important for what type of game Hi-Fi Rush is, and they weren't able to get it working without like frame dips here and there, which for the type of game Hi-Fi Rush is unacceptable. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's very rhythm based. So yeah, just to be clear, Pentiment is out on PS5, PS4, Nintendo Switch on right out now. Hi-Fi Rush is also out now, but only for PS5 digital storefronts. Grounded is coming out on April 16 to PS5, PS4, and Switch, and it'll be crossplay supported with existing platforms, all between them. And then the Sea of Thieves will be April 30th for PS5, also going to support crossplay between Xbox and PC.
Nope, thank you for the rundown. Yeah, Pentiment, I know a couple of us here have played it, and it's an excellent little kind of inventive little game. So you should play it if you've got time.
Yeah, it's good
Can
that
I
this got spread to like other platforms and like so more people can get to play this.
can I have a soapbox here for a second? So Pentiment is getting a physical release on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. Uh, and Hi-Fi Rush is also getting a physical release for PlayStation and Xbox now. Microsoft, by their own admission, is the biggest publisher of video games in the world now. Why the hell are they partnering with limited run games to do these physical releases instead of doing it themselves?
Mm.
That is a great question, James.
small indie company, as I understand.
It's just really frustrating because it's like when limited run games started, the idea was, oh, we'll give physical releases to these smaller developers that can't handle it. I did not realize that the trillion-dollar company Microsoft was a small developer that would need assistance when publishing a physical video game. It's like, sorry, I know that's completely unrelated. It's just like something that's really been kind of like pissing me off since the announcement because it's like, come on.
Yeah, like
Now, someone is-
limited run games, I sort of view it as like sort of like boutique, collectors, stuff that wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. So Microsoft, like, how long have you been in the Xbox business now? You can sell your Xbox games at retail. Come on.
They couldn't figure it out.
I mean,
It's
whether there are other platforms or not. So I don't know.
And it's like they have their own online storefront. If they didn't want to have a wider physical release, make it a pre-order on your own goddamn website. But yeah.
No, that is a little bit of a soapbox, but I'm kind of sitting here nodding along, like, yeah, that's silly. I don't understand it. And as someone who hasn't really um, been a patron of limited run games, my understanding is that they have some issues in terms of like timely deliveries or things like that. Like they're not
Timely
people when they
deliveries
see-
and also communication. I know that there was a few years back the big issue with the Shiren, the Wanderer, Tower of Fortune, Dice of Fate, PC and Switch physical releases, where people got their PC physical release in, and in their box for their PC physical release, they got a Steam code when it was advertised as, here is a CD jewel case with a disc where you can install the game from a disc. And that was a huge thing. And the way that some of the limited run games like founders kind of reacted in that situation, and in the months and years since, it's very embarrassing. Very embarrassing.
Well, I guess at the very least, we can hope that those that do decide to partake on the option to get a physical release for Pentiment will hopefully get their copies without issue. Hopefully, whatever caused those cracks to
Yeah.
be slipped before have been corrected, but we'll see.
Yep.
Continuing on some dates, a few more release dates for the upcoming months. None for May yet. But in March, we've got turn-based roguelike RPG Goblin Stone releasing on PC.
I don't know anything about this game except they asked me to cover it, so I did. And it's just like an indie kind of like it is roguelike where you have like a party of goblins that you kind of go through this sort of world and I guess see how far you can get and sort of like an Iron Man kind of thing, and then you start over. Some sort of roguelike interpretation there. I didn't look too much into it, to be honest.
Well, we have the trailer and the announcement up on our website if you're interested. In March, we also got the Switch release of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Adam, you covered this game way, way, way back when.
Yeah, they actually announced this like 2.5 years ago, the Switch version.
Good old Henry. Yep.
It was kind of so. I keep the release date list on our website up to date, and sometimes it's actually kind of annoying when like a game like this is announced or a port like this is announced. So like on my release date list and sort of like the undated bucket, I have Kingdom Come Deliverance for Switch. And literally like 25, 26 months later, it's like this hasn't moved at all. Is this still a thing? Maybe it's been silently canceled. I might have removed it from the list. I don't know. And then they finally are like, okay, it's finally dated and coming out next month. So yeah, just kind of a pet peeve of mine when something takes so long after the announcement to like get a follow up about when it's coming. But
Yeah,
this game
definitely
is
a lot
a
of
fun little
development complications.
Say that again.
So I said I imagine there's like a lot of development complications for the Switch version.
If I remember correctly from the post years ago, they kind of just like were playing around with developing it for Switch for fun, and they were basically sort of decided, hey, we think we can do this. Maybe they didn't expect it. Maybe they, I don't know, announced it too soon before they realized, oh, this is actually going to take a lot of work. And then now, 2 years of work later, they can finally release it. I don't know. But yeah, the game itself, it's a first-person open-world RPG. It's kind of immersive sim-ish. You got a lot of like outside of combat, you have a lot of like mechanics like lockpicking and stealth and like crafting and herb brewing and things like that. Um, it's kind of like an interesting game in that respect. It's also the sort of game where like, how do I put it? The combat in this game is first person melee, and it kind of feels like claustrophobic and sloppy and muddy, but sort of intentionally in a way, because like this is like medieval sword fighting. It's not meant to be like flashy and choreographed. It's very rough and like, can you get hits in, more hits on them before they get enough hits on you, sort of thing. So that's kind of the tone it goes for. It's supposed to be very realistic. That they're really pushing that as they were marketing it. No fantasy or anything like that.
But it feels rewarding, like, because like you start you start out shit, but then like
Yeah.
you progressively get better and better and better and better. You just like you kind of get that gradual comeuppance of like, hey, my character is getting stronger.
Yeah, it's definitely the sort of game where starting out you feel like you suck, where like you could take on you could try taking on and fighting the town like guard, like the town knight, but you're gonna get your butt kicked because you suck. Eventually, like by the time you get to the end of the game, you're almost like a walking demigod and you can just beat everyone. But yeah, you have to like in true RPG fashion, you have to like train up your stats and your skills and whatnot through exercise, if you will. So yeah, it's a fun little game. Or
Henry's
not
such a
really a
cool-
little game.
I also appreciate that Henry's like his own character. And
Yeah, Henry is just a normal dude. He's just so normal. I actually kind of like it.
Yeah.
Just guys being dudes.
No, she's just like a guy. He's like the son of a miller or something. I don't remember exactly. Just
Yeah, something like that.
and then somehow gets caught up in this big like political conflict. So
Other dates, we've got Anatria, The Last Song, releasing on June 21st for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
I feel a little bit bad for Jama Games because they were the first ones before Resident Evil 5 Vengeance, for Elden Ring DLC. They just they're like, all right, June 21st looks like a silent,
that's our
safe
day.
time to go. Yep, to release this Italian Souls like, and then a few days later, it's like, well,
Did you
Cool.
see the devs' reaction on Twitter?
oh yeah, I saw that feels freaks fed around, my friends.
I didn't see it.
So basically, it was like one of those like
WWE wrestling images of like it was like for this was like the Undertaker sneaking up on someone, I forgot who, and then I was
no,
like,
no,
that's
no.
like-
It was the one I saw. I guess it was a different member of the dev team, but it was like they had the the Oblivious comic. They had that that stick figure, and that transitioned to like the Realization.
oh
Which
yeah,
was
okay,
really good.
yeah. So this one, the one I saw from their official Twitter, I'll put it on our voice chat. But it was like the Undertaker, I believe, sneaking up on like one of the Hardy Boys, and then and then obviously dubbing Elden Ring DLC as Undertaker, and then the one being snuck up on as Anatria. So they know, they get it, but you know what? Hopefully the game is like good. Like I played like a Unreal Engine test at like PAX West last year, and it's like, okay, it has a neat gimmick of like switching between masks that have like their own unique properties to like kind of switch your role in combat.
Yeah.
For this Souls like, so it's coming from like a pretty interesting premise, like inspired by Italian folklore. We'll see.
And then we have one kind of a soft delay for Dungeons of Hinterberg. My understanding is that this was slated for spring 2024, and then the devs have said they're now shooting for summer. And we also got a I linked the wrong post here, I think.
no, that's the new trailer. So they released a new trailer that is basically showing off the swamp region of the game. The like Finnish word or whatever it is for that is Brunelssumpf. I probably mispronounced that. So basically, they announced this delay, but they also released a trailer that just kind of shows this new region. They show some of the combat. This game also has social elements where you can like speak with townspeople, and you have like literal relation bars, like relationship nodes or whatever with characters. It is an adventure RPG. So yeah, they basically they're showing off this swamp region and showing off combat exploration and relationships alongside the delay. I mean, to
Gotcha.
be
I get
honest,
it now.
when people say like we delayed it from spring to summer, I don't, I never put a lot of stock into like the quarters they say something's gonna release in. Like,
Yeah.
so the first year I did like the RPG release date list, I used to like categorize upcoming games if they weren't dated by like season. Like here are the games coming out in spring, here are the games coming out in summer, here are the games coming out in fall. But I realized that like almost like half of those games, if not more of them, I'd always just like push into the next bucket because it's like, oh, it's not coming out in spring. I guess it's coming out in summer. I guess it's not coming out in summer. It's coming out in fall. And then I basically like, I'm not doing this. I'm just gonna say it's coming out this year or next year. So I stopped with the I stopped caring too much about what quarter they say it's coming out in.
We also didn't have this on Google, I mean, on the document that we have here for the podcast, but we had our first October release dated this year.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we had the Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, coming out on Switch on October 10th. So,
first Deca Police.
Yeah, where's Deca Police? That's the one I also want to play Fantasy Life, but
so
Deca Police is the one I'm
So
gonna play.
imagine this, level 5, we made fun of this last year too, but this game, along with every other game that they work on, was dated for 2023, and now it's finally getting a release date almost a full year later, for Fantasy Life on October 10th.
It is still so funny. The funniest thing from when I was at TGS was having my appointment with Level 5 and saying, so this is still scheduled for this year, right? And the actual developer there, before they announced the delay, being like, not sure about that. It's like, oh man.
So by the way, I think most RPG fans are well aware of what's coming out like this month, March, April, and then like we were just talking about June starting to fill up. May right now is empty. But in the back half of the year, in terms of dated games, we only have 2. One, in August, we have Black Myth Wukong. That is the Chinese-developed Journey to the West Souls-like. That's caught some eyes. That's on August.
I won't be surprised if that gets delayed.
And then Fantasy Life is October. And then we have, a bunch of undated stuff, probably some of the bigger ones.
Trails Through Daybreak is coming out in summer.
At some point.
It would be very funny.
It
would be very funny. It would be very funny if originally they were planning to release Trails Through Daybreak on June 20th, because that's the first day of summer. It's like dated for summer, and then it's like now they're like, we need to push this back.
Yeah, there's also Visions of Mana, which is supposed to be summerish. Yeah.
It's like, man, outside of
some point, right?
Yeah, also some undisclosed point in summer. Really, outside of May, it just seems like the rest of the year is still going to be the same stuff, where it's like, why are these 2 massive RPGs releasing within a week of each other?
Yeah, watch like Visions of Mana and Trails Through Daybreak release on the same day or something.
Thank God I only have to play one of those.
Yeah.
Not playing a Trails game in English ever again, especially since I can just like request code from Falcon.
There's also the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 for fall.
Yep.
And that's all the dates that I had. So that's all the news topics that I had listed for this episode of the Tetracast. Did I miss one?
No, I'm talking about East 10 Nordics, the Western release.
Oh yeah, we forgot about East 10.
Yeah.
Fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Adam,
that game is neat.
Is if it has like a season, you should put it in like near those other dates so that it doesn't surprise us.
No.
Okay. But yeah, all right. I don't want to look at the timestamp. How long has this been? Alrighty. This is par for the course for Nintendo Direct episode of the Tetracast. All right, Nintendo, you're not allowed to have another Direct until like your June timeframe Direct.
Don't worry, they won't.
But anyway.
Yeah, but when it happens, it'll be the big Switch 2 showcase, I'm sure.
I believe also in a few days there's gonna be a new Pokemon Presents stream.
Oh god, so next week is also going to be a long podcast between that and the FS7 discussion. Oh
Yeah.
man. Ugh.
Well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
So what are we expecting from Pokemon Presents?
I find it very funny that pretty much everyone's being like, please do not announce the Black and White remakes. Please do not announce those. We'll take a Legends game, but don't announce a Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl style remake of Black and White, because it's striking how even the Pokemon fans got broken by the state of those remakes.
They're gonna announce
Yeah.
they're gonna announce a collab with Pal World. That's what they're gonna announce.
I hope so. But yeah, a new Legends Entei or whatever. Like a new Legends game would be really cool.
Yeah.
We'll see. And when is that? We're recording this on the 24th, and that is slated for
6 a.m. on the 27th.
all right, so only in a couple of days. So by the time someone's listening to this, that might have already happened. But anyways, all the things that we talked about, all the news posts we can find on rpgsite.net. That includes the reviews for Shiren the Wanderer 6. Obviously, Final Fantasy 7 Remake on this Tetracast. We'll have a more further discussion next week. But of course, the review is already up on the website at rpgsite.net. We also have, I didn't cover this one before, but Paige did write up a review on Bandle Tale, a League of Legends story that came out. So we have a review for that one up on the site as well.
Also, I believe next week we'll hear more about Greedfall 2.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Nacon live stream. That's right.
Which usually doesn't have a whole lot for our purview, but yes, it does have Greedfall 2 on there. Scott also wrote up a feature on the new Magic the Gathering decks based on Fallout. So if you're a Magic head, you can go ahead and give that article a look at. You can find RPG Site on all the social media platforms. Just search for RPG Space Site and you should be able to find us. You can join our Discord at the link at the top of the homepage or go to discord.gg/RPG Site. And we'll be back next week with a likely very Final Fantasy VII Rebirth themed episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. And we'll talk to y'all later.